Chapter 167. Chengde's summer palace was not far from the capital, about 200 miles away. However, because of the slow speed, it would take 2 or 3 days, or even longer, to get there. In such weather, it must be uncomfortable to sleep in the open. However, this group of people were either members of the royal family or high-ranking officials and nobles. With a group of people serving them, they could even bathe 8 times a day properly, let alone eat, drink, go to the toilet, and sleep. Of course, this was just a saying. Even the king of hell would not be so crazy. Compared with when they were at home, everything was about the same. However, this was only Jingwan's thought. Along the way, there were all kinds of complaints. Fortunately, a lot of things had been taken away by the servants in advance to thoroughly clean up the residence of the summer palace. At the same time, everything had been settled. Otherwise, it would have been even more infuriating. This time, the masters of the Luo family who went to Chengde's summer palace for the summer could be counted with one hand. In the first branch, because little Wang was about to give birth, Wang naturally could not leave. Her husband, Luo Rongwen, was an official, so he was not in the entourage. Luo Rongwei was also on an errand at present, needless to say, Luo Rongping. With his condition, it was better for him to stay at home. Nominally, Lu had to take care of him. The one who was relatively free was Luo Rongyan, who had a nominal position. However, he seemed to be stimulated and now began to work hard. Even if he did not like those things in the officialdom, he forced himself to slowly accept them. Like Zhang, Madame Wu was reluctant to leave her husband. Therefore, the 8 people of their generation did not go. Naturally, Madame Luo and the concubines, and so on, were even less likely to have a chance. As for the younger generation, except for Jingwan and Luo Jinghua, the others did not go. The reason was very simple. Their parents did not go. If they went, wouldn't the old madam take care of them? Madame Luo's health looked good. However, after Luo Peishan learned that he almost died a few years ago, he did not dare to let her tire herself out. Therefore, except for those who did not need to worry, everyone stayed at home obediently. The only ones who did not need to worry and could leave at all were Jingwan, Luo Jinghua, and Sun Yijia. Although Madame Luo did not say anything, it was not bad. Therefore, along the way, the Luo family could be said to be the most easygoing family. Although Jingwan tried her best to integrate into this world and did not need to look at the people under the feudal imperial society as equals most of the time, she still tried her best to be considerate of the people who served her. If the people who served them worked hard, then the servants who served them must work even harder. Even at the moment, whether they were served or served, their status had already determined everything. If they were taken for granted, Jingwan still could not completely synchronize with their thoughts. Jingwan had been by Madame Luo's side for so many years. Madame Luo was more or less influenced by Jingwan. She did not deliberately do anything and acted naturally. It seemed that when she saw too many people wandering around in front of her, she became more annoyed and irritable. Sun Yijia had been with Jingwan for a long time and was also imperceptibly influenced. Therefore, while the servants of other families were busy with work, the Luo family section was much quieter. The servants even had time to stay in the carriage to enjoy the cool air and chat with each other. Even if they had something to do, there was no sign of them being in a hurry. Sun Yijia's servant girls gathered together with Jingwan. "Third young lady has always been like this?" they asked curiously. She did not quite understand what they meant. Therefore, the other party pointed to the family behind the Luo family. The carriages were moving forward, but the servants had to run in front and back. Their clothes had long been soaked in sweat. The status of the servants in charge of running was relatively low among the servants. They looked like they were mostly 12 or 13 years old. Jingwan's servant girls could not help but laugh. "Our young lady has always been very good. She has a good temper and is generous to us. She never loses her temper. Even to us, as servants, she is very considerate. If there is a small illness or pain, she will give us leave. Usually, she will also say that we will take turns to take leave. I think there is no master better to serve than our young lady." They had always known this, but they had never experienced it more deeply than now. Hearing their words, Sun Ijia's servant girls were a little envious. However, their young lady was actually very good, and now there was a tendency for her to be closer to third young lady. It was their blessing to be able to serve such a master. However, a certain mama, who also happened to hear these words, thought more. However, if they only had this side of leniency, they probably wouldn't be able to raise these servant girls who were strict with themselves. Even if Qingju's temperament was a bit jumpy, she wouldn't be careless in the things that she should do. At this moment, the carriages stopped. It was obvious that Lu Chengdi was making trouble again. Qingju stretched her head out to look. Seeing the wet nurse in the carriage in front of them, getting off and walking toward them, she hurriedly waved her hand, indicating that she knew and did not need to come over. "I will go and see the young lady first. You guys prepare some iced fruits for the young lady. Also, go and find out how long we will stop. If it is long, find a place outside and open an umbrella." Qingju said, and then got off the carriage. The others also quickly took action. Because she had been in the carriage for a long time, Jingwan was a little carsick. However, she still stayed quietly and did not cause trouble for others. Before she left, Nanny Gong and the others had already prepared a lot of food for her. They were especially particular about the food. Sun Ijia benefited a lot from the food. She was pregnant, so it was naturally more difficult for her. But when they were preparing, Jingwan had already prepared a portion for her. She seemed to be in good spirits, much better than Jingwan. Luo Jinghua and Sun Ijia were very grateful. This little sister was so considerate. Jingwan just smiled. Anyway, she was going to use it herself, and sister-in-law was just incidental. They knew very well whether it was incidental or not. She could have told them in advance and let them prepare it themselves. But in fact, some of the things that Nanny Gong and the others prepared were specially for Sun Ijia. In fact, Jingwan really felt that it was too troublesome to ask her brother and sister-in-law to prepare another set of things. Anyway, she had to prepare more at one time. It would save her a lot of trouble. There were not many things that were specially prepared for Sun Ijia. Sun Ijia's wet nurse and the others all saw this and were very grateful. After Sun Ijia's wet nurse, who specially served her in this aspect, was driven away, they had been learning. But after all, they did not have enough time to learn many things. Moreover, Nanny Gong, an etiquette instructor, seemed to be omniscient in this aspect. At this time, they did not care so much and hurriedly asked for advice. Nanny Gong was not stingy. Sun Ijia stayed in Jingwan's carriage because Jingwan's carriage was not only comfortable, but also not so bumpy. In fact, when they left the capital, Jingwan had already prepared to give half of it to her. Even if she did not stay, she would have let her stay. She leaned comfortably and took a nap like this for a while. Looking at it now, Jin Xinwang is not that bad. Wan Mimi, don't you think so? Jingwan closed her eyes and faintly made an N sound. Sun Ijia could not tell if she was really responding to her, or if she was just being perfunctory. Sun Ijia saw that she suddenly became so delicate. Thinking about it, it also made people's heart ache. Wan Mimi, the carriages have stopped. Do you want to go down for a walk? Wait a moment, let's see how long it will be. When Sun Ijia heard this, she did not move. She looked at the decorations on the roof of the carriage and suddenly became interested. She carefully looked at the layout of the carriage. A lot of things looked ordinary, but if you paid a little attention, you would find that there was not a single thing that was ordinary. Ivory mats were considered extravagant in Duke Ding's Fu, but they were directly used to cushion the ground. When she first came in, she did not notice it. When she noticed it, the corners of her mouth could not help but twitch. And this couch, she did not know what was inside the cushion. It was soft and cool. Under the cushion, Sun Ijia reached out and touched it. The edges were very smooth. Because it was covered, Sun Ijia did not know what material it was made of. She simply lifted it from the bottom to take a look. Then, Sun Ijia silently put it down. Cool jade. It was actually cool jade that was even rarer than warm jade. The entire bottom of the couch was covered with it. As for the other things, Sun Ijia did not want to continue looking. If she continued to look, she, who grew up in a rich nest, would be jealous. Should it be said that he was worthy of being called the richest and most prodigal Jin Qinhuang? Just the things that were on the surface, Sun Yijia slightly estimated. His mother, the value was already more than 1,000,000 taels of silver. That's right, this carriage was sent over by Li Hongyuan a day before they set off. From the outside, it looked very ordinary and suited Jingwan's status. But inside, those who didn't know what was good for them didn't care, but those who knew what was good for them felt like they were blind. When old Madame Luo saw this carriage, she was also silent for a while. However, she heard that this carriage had been specially modified so that it would not be so bumpy. She thought about how her own granddaughter had been sitting in this carriage for a long time and thought about the matter of Jin Qinhuang. No matter how much he cared about Wan Wan, his bad reputation was something that he owed Wan Wan. Moreover, Wan Wan was his daughter-in-law from outside. No matter how good he was to Wan Wan, it was only right that he treated her well. Thus, he impolitely waved his hand and let Jingwan take it. Jingwan did not look carefully at the things on the carriage. In any case, she had seen the extravagance of Li Hongyuan's carriage. Naturally, she did not pay much attention to it. What she cared about was also the shock absorption effect. However, for Jingwan, Jin Qinhuang was actually just a person that she knew. It was more special. Aside from the status of being engaged, there was also a very intimate contact. Even so, there was still no way for her to calmly accept his things. Although in Qiyuan, after an engagement, giving some things would not be criticized. But what Jin Qinhuang did for her was considered considerate and thoughtful. To a certain extent, for example, it was usually two families who gave gifts during the New Year. What he did was a bit excessive. However, seeing that her grandmother accepted it without saying anything, Jingwan did not say much. In any case, the one who enjoyed it in the end would be herself. If she used all sorts of excuses to brush away Jin Qinhuang's face, it would not only make things difficult for him, it would also make her seem pretentious. She did not want to be a slut. Even after she found out the value of this carriage, she was silent for a moment and did some calculations. And she was given a luxurious carriage that was probably worth a few 100,000,000 yuan. When she thought about how the other party's net worth was in the tens or hundreds of billions, to him, this was probably just a drop in the ocean. Thus, Jingwan calmed down. Fortunately, Li Hongyuan's goal was to make Jingwan feel more comfortable and did not think of pleasing her. Otherwise, Jingwan's reaction would probably be so cold that he would be depressed again. However, Li Hongyuan also knew that Jingwan did not really care about material things. If it was good or fine, she could enjoy it. If it was bad or rough, she would not complain or refuse. It all depended on the environment. Therefore, if he wanted to use ordinary means like clothes and jewelry to please her, it was basically impossible. Sun Yijia closed her eyes to avoid being annoyed. Seeing that Jin Qinhuang's current performance was still barely acceptable, she decided to say less bad things about him. Of course, just this was definitely not enough. That rotten virtue of being fond of beauty was the key point. Thinking of this, Sun Yijia was stuffy again. Even if he was a Qinhuang, couldn't he be a bit more clean? There was a rustling sound outside. Very quickly, the inner curtain was lifted. Qing Zhu had already taken off her embroidered shoes. She first greeted Sun Yijia, then walked to Jingwan's side and whispered, "Miss, are you still uncomfortable?" Jingwan opened her eyes. "It's okay. Do you know how long it will be?" "I already went to ask. Does Miss want to eat some fruit?" "Don't eat too much." "Don't worry, I know your habits. How about this servant read a passage to you now?" When the carriage was moving, reading a book hurt the eyes. Miss never let them read at that time. "Not for the time being." Jingwan sat up. "Sister-in-law, what do you think? Anyone with discerning eyes can see that I am definitely better than you." Sun Yijia teased. "Then it's fine," Jingwan said without thinking. Pregnant people fainted more easily. This was an indisputable fact. But now she was even more delicate than pregnant women. Jingwan was also helpless. Qing Zhu covered her mouth and laughed. She took the round fan and gently fanned Jingwan. Because Sunny Jia was pregnant, there was no ice basin in the carriage. However, the inside of the carriage was much cooler than outside, so she wouldn't sweat if she stayed inside quietly. Because of this, Sun Yijia decided to stay. Otherwise, she wouldn't be willing to let Jingwan suffer without ice along with her. Sun Yijia had been puzzled before. Her carriage didn't have this effect. Now, she suspected that under the ivory mat, there was also cold jade. Fan sister-in-law. Pregnant people get hot easily. As soon as she finished speaking, the curtain was lifted again. This time, there were several people. Miss, third young madam, there is a message from the front. There is a forest ahead. His Majesty thinks the scenery is good, so he asked us to stop. He said that we will continue after lunch. This servant will ask someone to hold up the umbrella. Come down and sit for a while. There were still 2 hours before lunch. Moreover, even if the forest was big enough, could the carriage go deep into it? As expected of the emperor, he would never consider the feelings of others, nor would he consider the feelings of others. He was really not an ordinary kind of willfulness. This stop would take at least 4 hours. They could not stay in the carriage for long. The wet nurse and the maidservant quickly prepared the things outside. Unlike other families, who had to spend time and effort to set up a shelter, they only had a big umbrella. With Sister Hei and Baishao, they did not need to spend much effort to set up the umbrella. Then they laid out a mat, a low table, a chair, tea and snacks, a fruit plate, and even quickly made a vase with materials from the ground. Sun Yijia saw the whole process. Speaking of which, the other families had not set up the pillars yet, but it was all done here. Moreover, it was a few servant girls who looked equally delicate. Sun Yijia turned to look at Jingwan. She felt that this result must have something to do with Sister Wan. TSK, she was indeed different. It was obviously a very simple thing, but others could not think of it. Sister-in-law, don't be in a daze. Let's go. Jingwan looked at Sun Yijia's admiring eyes and found it amusing. Was it necessary? She just made it according to the beach sunbathing in her previous life. When the two of them got out of the carriage, Luo Jinghua also came over. When he saw that the shelter was ready, he glanced at Jingwan. Just now, I asked grandmother if I should ask someone to set up a shelter. Grandmother said that I don't need to worry about it. Little sister, you will get it ready. I was thinking that how could I let you do this kind of thing? In the end, I am the one who is idling. Jingwan rolled her eyes at him. Little sister Hei, give the umbrella in your hand to third young master. He doesn't want to be an idler. Luo Jinghua looked at the big umbrella. Little sister Hei could hold it easily, but he guessed that it was not light. Little sister Hei's eyes obviously had some bad intentions. To avoid embarrassing himself, he repeatedly begged for mercy. Little sister, third elder brother was wrong. Please forgive third elder brother. Third elder brother is just an idler. Sun Yijia walked over and smiled as she gently pinched his arm. Good for nothing. Luo Jinghua went from idling to living off a woman. With little sister and a capable wife, it doesn't matter if I'm not good for nothing. His expression was especially shameless. Bastard, you really are good for nothing. Luo Peishan scolded him. Luo Jinghua shrunk his neck and immediately jumped behind Sun Yijia. He pulled Sun Yijia's arm. Wife, why didn't you remind me that grandfather was coming? He seemed to have lowered his voice, but in fact everyone heard it. Even though she knew that he was doing it on purpose, Sun Yijia still blushed. Who cares about you, you good for nothing? She quickly walked to Jingwan's side. She even wished that Jingwan's entire body would block her. Luo Jinghua looked quite aggrieved. Everyone finally couldn't hold back their laughter. It seemed that the unbearable heat had subsided a lot. You're all not young anymore, but you're still acting like children. Madame Luo laughed and shook her head. While they were joking around, 2 more large umbrellas were set up and other things were also prepared. Luo Peishan stroked his beard and nodded with a smile. It's indeed fast and convenient. Thus, when the other families had just started, the masters of the Luo family had already sat down and started chatting. That wasn't all. An even bigger umbrella was taken down. What was different was that after it was opened, the pillars were at the four corners. After it was fixed, it was completely a shade. The things the servants were doing could all be placed under it. Little sister, actually, 2 of those would be enough. There's no need to go through so much trouble. Luo Jinghua looked up. This is called fun, do you understand? Jingwan said unhappily. She could say that when she was in Qi'an Prefecture, she was used to such big umbrellas. The furthest place she traveled was her own village, so there was no need for the servants to do outdoor work. Thus, a few days before she left, she had people prepare a few big umbrellas. Only then did she realize that it was actually inconvenient, so she thought of this. In the end, Nurse Gong and the others nodded as if it was a matter of course. Masters and servants should be separated. Well, Jingwan didn't say anything. Luo Jinghua didn't know what fun was, but separating like this was indeed more comfortable than all of them being under the same shade. When the left and right families of the Luo family saw the situation of the Luo family, they were immediately envious, jealous, and hateful. Especially those servants who were busy putting up airs. They were sweating profusely. As for the masters, they didn't have a place to stay for a long time, so they felt more and more stuffy in the carriage. Even the ice basin couldn't relieve the heat, so their temper became even more irritable. Nurse Gong brought them freshly squeezed fruit juice. Everyone else used iced fruits. Jingwan and Luo Jinghua even had a small piece of ice added. However, Madame Luo and Sun Yijia used slightly cold fruits. While the others were still looking at the strange sight, Madame Luo was the first to pick up a small bamboo tube and put it into the juice. She took a sip and then let out a subtle sigh of relief. However, seeing her relaxed expression, her heart should be extremely happy. However, looking at her skillful movements, it was obvious that she was used to this. When the other 3 saw this, they followed suit. After taking a sip, they all felt very comfortable. Jingwan also slowly took a sip. The cool feeling slid from her mouth to her stomach, making her whole body feel comfortable. The discomfort caused by the motion sickness was almost instantly reduced by a lot. Drinking icy cold fruit juice with his family, there were people fanning him beside. Even though it was June, it was still a great enjoyment to be in the wilderness with such beautiful scenery. Jingwan looked at the forest in the distance and was a little lost in thought. Sun Yijia reached out and waved her hand in front of Jingwan. She didn't know when, but she had moved from Luo Jinghua to Jingwan's side. When she saw Jingwan looking at her, she asked, "What are you looking at? Didn't you hear me when I called you?" Jingwan raised the corner of her mouth, and a smile overflowed from the depths of her eyes. "I just suddenly feel very happy. Even if it's a hot summer day, even if it's a little uncomfortable now, I still feel very good." Hearing her words, the others looked over, especially Madame Luo, whose gaze was exceptionally gentle. "Grandmother is also very happy, isn't she?" Jingwan smiled. Madame Luo didn't deny it and nodded with a faint smile. Looking at her smile, Luo Peishan suddenly understood something. He had let her down a lot. However, even so, at this time, he couldn't bring up the idea of retiring and then accompany her to enjoy her old age. The one who understood Luo Peishan the most was indeed Madame Luo. Seeing his expression at this time, she knew what he was thinking. Lord doesn't need to think too much. This moment is enough. Even if it was for Wan Wan, it was impossible for him to retire at this time. Although they didn't particularly understand the atmosphere between the 2 elders, Luo Jinghua and Sun Yijia looked at each other tacitly. Their eyes flashed with a seemingly indescribable warmth, but they understood each other's feelings. Jingwan subconsciously covered her eyes. Single people couldn't afford to be hurt. This pair of old and young represented the beginning and end of marriage. They were brimming with happiness, and the lethality of this was extraordinary. It caused her to even have a little bit of expectation for marriage. Aiching Luo is very comfortable. Hearing this, the masters of the Luo family hurriedly looked back. Lu Qingdi was standing beside the carriage, and behind him was a group of people. His sons, palace servants, and the imperial guards brought along with them. They obviously came from the other side of the carriage. Your Majesty the Emperor, you should at least let someone say something in advance. Is it really good for you to silently inspect the private lives of your subjects? Alright, in this person's eyes, there was probably nothing he did that could be said to be bad. The servants followed their masters and hurriedly stood up to salute. Aiching, you may dispense with the formalities. Lu Chengdi modestly raised his hand. He walked over unhurriedly and saw the things on the table. Aiching Luo is indeed very comfortable. His voice couldn't help but become a little happier. Along the way, in fact, Lu Chengdi's pressure was getting lower and lower. He felt that when he was in the capital, he didn't have such a good time. So he stopped on a whim, intending to let everyone enjoy themselves. Then, he was prepared to see how grateful they were to him on a whim. However, it was obvious that they didn't hear the gratitude. There were a lot of grumbling and complaining. When they saw him, they were scared pale and knelt down to beg for forgiveness. But he couldn't punish them because of this. Although he was angry, he still continued to walk as if he was torturing himself. Except for Li Hongyuan, who was still calm and composed. The rest of the people who followed him didn't dare to breathe loudly for fear of offending him accidentally. But now, when they came to the Luo family, it seemed that the gloomy atmosphere suddenly turned sunny. Lu Chengdi looked around. Sure enough, it wasn't his decision that was wrong. It was clearly that the others were too stupid. Who came up with this idea? Jingwan stepped forward at Luo Peishan's signal. Your Majesty, it was me. Oh, it's you again. Good, good, good. You're really smart. Lu Chengdi looked very pleased. Your Majesty, you flatter me. I'm just opportunistic. It's nothing. You don't have to be modest. Even if you're opportunistic, I don't see anyone else who has this ability. What are you drinking? Give me a cup. Even though he was sweating now, Lu Chengdi was still in high spirits. It was obvious that he wanted to stay. The table of the two elders was quickly cleaned up. Lu Chengdi was invited to sit down, and his close servant who served him hurriedly followed Nanny Gong to prepare fruit juice and other things for him. Because they didn't bring Lu Chengdi special things, they could only make do with the Luo family's things at this time. However, all the things were checked again and again. Although it was reasonable to do, so because it was for the emperor, it still made people angry. It was Nanny Gong who had this thought. However, she didn't show it on her face at all. If she really wanted to poison him, there were many poisons that couldn't be detected by silver needles. While waiting, Nanny Gong said, My dear minister, go get the chess pieces and play a game with me. Because Jingwan's carriage was the closest, he directly took the chess pieces from her carriage. https://www.beacon.com/11/11807/6653154. HTML. Please click here to report. Registration is free. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.beacon.com. Beacon. Com mobile version, reading website, mbeacon.com. Chapter 168. Unexpectedly, Jingwan met Jin Qinhuang's gaze, but after a brief moment of contact, she seemed to naturally shift her gaze away. Because of that intimate contact, she could maintain her composure on the surface, but to say that she didn't care at all, it would definitely be a lie. Moreover, she always felt that his gaze was too invasive. Placing the chessboard and chess pieces on the table in front of Lu Chengdi and Luo Peishan, Lu Chengdi knocked on the chessboard and picked up a chess piece to examine it. Oh, my beloved subject, you really dote on your granddaughter, ah. The things you give her are better than what Zhan usually uses. Lu Chengdi was just saying this and didn't have any other meaning. He basically knew the details of the important ministers in the court. The Luo family also had 200 to 300 years of accumulation. Its history was much longer than the Li dynasty, so it was normal to have some family property. He wasn't the kind of person who would allow the things his subjects used to be better than his own. Moreover, who stipulated that the emperor must use the most extravagant things. What he used, even if it was tattered, others had to treat it as a treasure. Between the monarch and his subjects, there was no one who gave way to the other. They directly followed the rules. Luo Peishan placed the first chess piece and glanced at Jingwan. This girl is very lovable, but she is the most worry-free. So he could only give her some good things. Luo Peishan was so shameless to take Li Hongyuan's credit. Lu Qingdi nodded in understanding. Every family's parent had the same mentality. He also glanced at Jingwan. She is indeed a good girl. Why don't Jen have such a daughter? However, they all say that a son-in-law is half a son, so this daughter-in-law is also half a daughter. Saying this, his gaze swept and fell on his sixth son, who quite consciously sat on Jingwan's seat. You evil creature, treat your daughter-in-law better in the future, do you hear me? It could be seen that Lu Qingdi also knew the extent of this son's dregs, which was really hateful. Li Hongyuan acted as if he didn't hear it. He didn't even look at Lu Qingdi. He threw the small bamboo tube in Jingwan's cup aside, picked it up and drank it up. His actions were natural and smooth, so fast that no one could stop him. She smacked her lips. It tastes pretty good. Give me another glass. She shook the glass, and the ice cubes clinked inside. Add more ice. Sharing a cup of wine in front of everyone was something that husband and wife would not do, especially if the husband drank the wife's leftovers. If this was known, the wife would probably be scolded to death by her mother-in-law. Jingwan was very embarrassed. Wang Ye, I know you're used to being casual, but can't you be a little more careful? It doesn't matter if you're thick-skinned. But, although he felt that Li Hongyuan's behavior was inappropriate, he had done countless things hundreds of times worse, so Lu Qingdi didn't feel anything. He looked back at the chessboard. Bastard. He put down the chess piece in his hand. Jingwan breathed a sigh of relief. However, a certain king of hell refused to stop. He looked up at Jingwan and knocked on the table with the cup. Jingwan had a headache, asking Wang Ye to wait for a moment. She directly left and gave him another cup. She didn't juice it again like when she served Lu Qingdi. Instead, she poured the previously squeezed juice. In order to speed up the cooling of the juice, she directly broke the ice. Seeing that Gong Mama had already prepared the other prince's cups, she said, Mama, send it over together. Gong Mama wanted to help, but according to her understanding of a certain person, if she really did that, it would definitely cause trouble. Miss Jin Qinwang, all right, Mama, you don't need to say anything. I know. It could be seen that even if Jingwan didn't have much contact with him, she still had a deep understanding of some things. She waited until Lu Qingdi's portion was ready before sending it over together. Wang Ye, please enjoy. Using the same cup, Li Hongyuan poured the juice into the previous cup before picking it up to drink. Jingwan deliberately didn't want him to continue using her cup. As a result, meeting such a person, Jingwan was really at her wit's end. In addition, she held up 2 large umbrellas, which were also the last 2. She might as well just have enough for the other princes to use. There were a total of 4 kinds of juice. She poured them into the pot, paired them with cups and ice cubes before presenting them. After asking about the prince's preferences, the maidservants then served them. They ate a lot of fruits and squeezed juice, but they always felt that the taste was a bit strange. They didn't really drink it, let alone adding ice cubes, this novel method. This was also your third miss idea? Prince Rue asked. Replying to Wang Ye, yes. The maidservant respectfully replied. Prince Rue thought of his third Mississippi. Although they both had the surname Luo, they were too different. His gaze swept over Jingwan. If it was her, he was afraid that Luo Peishan would take the initiative to pledge allegiance to him without him doing anything. When his eyes gradually became deep and serene, he suddenly felt a sharp light. He was slightly startled and met Li Hongyuan's eyes, which were overflowing with hostility. The weather in June was as cold as winter. Prince Rue thought that if he dared to covet Luo Peishan's woman as his legal wife, he didn't know what would happen. Moreover, his father, the emperor, and mother would not let him off. He immediately smiled at Li Hongyuan to show that he absolutely had no evil thoughts. Li Hongyuan raised the corner of his mouth, which was a bit sinister. Lu Chengdi looked at the chessboard and reached out his hand. The attendant handed the cup to him. When he took it back, he saw the small bamboo tube. Even if he had never used it before, he immediately learned it without a teacher. He took a sip. It tasted good, but it was a bit cold. Even if he hadn't eaten it before, he knew that there was no ice in it. "Why didn't you add ice?" The valet groaned inwardly. Ice cubes were so cold that many people could eat them. Emperors in history did not live long lives, including Emperor Lu Qingdi. In fact, his physical condition was far worse than his peers. If something happened to his body, who would be responsible? Was it because they didn't serve him well enough, or was it because the Luo family shouldn't have taken out this way of eating? Even if you are the emperor, there should be a limit to your willfulness. Eating ice at your age, do you want to die? Lu Chengdi's veins bulged on his forehead. He threw the chess piece in his hand over. "Evil creature, I am still young. What's wrong with eating some ice? Who can be more willful than you?" Li Hongyuan raised his hand and caught the chess piece. "You have a bunch of grandchildren, and you dare to say that you are young? It's one thing to refuse to accept old age, and another to deceive yourself. No matter how willful I am, I will not joke about my body. It's not yours, so don't smash it. Also, being impulsive and easily angered is harmful to the body." Lu Chengdi's chest heaved up and down. It was obvious that he was very angry. Luo Peishan's expression was as usual as he lightly tapped on the chessboard. "Emperor, it's your turn." People who saw this scene for the first time were really surprised. For example, Jingwan, Luo Laofuren, and Luo Jinghua. Sun Yijia, who had moved her seat to sit with Luo Laofuren, was the same as the others. She was used to seeing this and was accustomed to it. It was said that Jin Qinhuang was lawless and out of control. Even his old man would stand up for him. Lu Chengdi often flew into a rage. Jingwan originally thought that this matter must have been exaggerated. No matter how much Lu Chengdi indulged his son, he was first the monarch and second the father. How could he tolerate his son's disrespect? However, seeing that Lu Chengdi's undulating chest returned to its original level, continuing to play his chess, drinking his fruit juice, and not adding ice, his anger disappeared so quickly. So magical. Jingwan could be considered to have opened her eyes. Even her 3 views were slightly refreshed. However, Jingwan didn't know that this was actually the result of the accumulation of time. Li Hongyuan tested Lu Chengdi's bottom line step by step. At least at the beginning, he absolutely couldn't do it to this extent. He only borrowed Lu Chengdi's guilt and heart to make up for it, moving forward step by step. And Lu Chengdi unknowingly retreated bit by bit. His tolerance became higher and higher, so much so that it became a habit, a behavior pattern that when changed it would be strange, and other people were also used to it. Even for Lu Chengdi, it was a rare enjoyment. That's right, it was enjoyment. In his eyes, this was a pure father-son relationship, without any interest. Even if he was angry, it was also habitual. It came quickly and went quickly. For example, just now, in his understanding, this son's words weren't pleasant to hear, but in essence, he was concerned about his health. This evil thing had angered him more and cared less. When his anger subsided, his heart was still happy. If it was another person, even if you were careful and careful, deliberating and deliberating, you might be accused of harboring ulterior motives and secretly prying into the health of the dragon body. To put it bluntly, Lu Chengdi was a masochist. So much so that Lu Chengdi's personal attendant was still grateful to Li Hongyuan. As for whether Li Hongyuan was really concerned about Lu Chengdi, perhaps a little bit. If he wasn't worried that something would happen to him and the Luo family would be implicated, even if he ate a lot, Li Hongyuan wouldn't lift his eyelids. Even if he didn't have a maternal family, his wisdom, shrewdness, and skill were not lacking. More importantly, under the eyes of others, He could make so many people swear loyalty to him. Just thinking about it made people shudder. It was such a person who wholeheartedly schemed against her own granddaughter. That was like laying down an inescapable net. Even if Wan Wan was smart, she was still a woman in the boudoir. The restriction was too big. How could she break free? Old Madame Luo didn't know if Jean Qinhuang liked her granddaughter more, or if it was because of the obsession caused by the dream. She was afraid that it was the latter. If that was the case, after getting her, the obsession would disappear. At that time, it would be better if he just gave Wan the cold shoulder. She was afraid that he would think that what he did before was not worth it. For a woman, he would go through so much trouble, lose face, and then want to remove the stain of the past. But now, there was no way to retreat. No, it should be said that from the moment he started scheming, there was no way to retreat. Jingwan wanted to sit with old Madame Luo and her brother and sister-in-law. A certain person who never cared about secular etiquette would tell you, let alone a door, there wasn't even a crack in the door. Thus, Jingwan had to bite the bullet and sit opposite Li Hongyuan, the farthest position from him. Lu Qingdi shot a glance at Li Hongyuan. You evil creature, take it easy for lousy. It's fine if you don't have any face, but don't harm. Luo Peishan suddenly coughed. Even if you're the emperor, don't go too far. Everyone is turning a blind eye to it, but you still have to expose it, right? My good granddaughter is being wronged right now, but you still have to peel off her face? Lu Qingdi was a little embarrassed. His old face was completely thrown away by this evil creature. Jingwan felt that this father and son's faces were actually the same. Fortunately, her face was thick enough, so she wouldn't be at a loss of what to do because of the gazes of a group of people. Wasn't this also because Li Hongyuan stepped on Jingwan's bottom line and took advantage of her in various ways? He knew that Jingwan wasn't an ordinary woman in the boudoir and wouldn't feel humiliated because of this matter. And his reputation was already very bad. As long as he didn't go too far, he wouldn't splash dirty water on Jingwan. Maybe someone would even sympathize with her. Therefore, Li Hongyuan was really such a scheming person. Fortunately, Li Hongyuan didn't do anything else, and his eyes fell on the chessboard. Li Hongyuan's chess skills were not an exaggeration to call him a master. Therefore, after watching for a while, he became disinterested. His eyes fell on Jingwan again. He wanted to pull his wife into his arms and kiss and hug her, but unfortunately, he could only think about it. He glanced around. The Minister of Revenue, who was at the back of the Luo family's carriage, brought his eldest son to the Luo family's residence to join in the fun. In fact, he wanted to make his presence known in front of Lu Qingdi. He probably saw that there was no extra shade in the Luo family's residence at this time, so he probably had to bring all his children and grandchildren. The imperial guards were scattered around. Under the sun, they stood upright. Although Li Hongyuan didn't care about these people, the current commander of the imperial guards was indeed a figure. The imperial guards under him were much better than the previous commander. However, this person was promoted by his father and was very loyal. However, most people had weaknesses that could be exploited, and this person was no exception. However, Li Hongyuan wasn't in a hurry now. It wasn't time yet. The servants of the Luo family gave a bowl of iced mung bean soup to each of the imperial guards. This was the best time to relieve the heat. It wasn't to win people's hearts, but it was better than winning people's hearts. There was always an indescribable kindness and softness in Wan Wan. If she did many things, she would probably win the hearts of the people without having to do them. Accompany me for a walk, Li Hongyuan suddenly said. Jingwan looked at him. Your Highness, can you not always do what you want? It's good to go for a walk. Also, in the wilderness, bring a few more people with you. Just when Jingwan was thinking about how to refuse, Lu Qingdi, who didn't mind too much trouble, spoke first. He made it clear that he wanted to help his son and didn't give anyone a chance to refuse. If you refused, it was equivalent to defying the imperial edict. Moreover, once he spoke, there was no chance for rumors to appear. You know that it's difficult for your son to find his wife, but you don't have to go to this extent, do you? It's such a hot day. and I'm drenched in sweat after walking. Where do you think I'm sitting with you, drinking something while you're being fanned by someone? Also, can you play Go seriously? Are you listening to what others are saying while you play Go, or what? The scenery here is not bad, but remember to bring an umbrella, old Madame Luo said. Because of her deep worries, old Madame Luo didn't mind Jingwan interacting with Jin Qinhuang before marriage. Feelings were formed through interaction. She hoped that Jingwan would have some understanding of Jin Qinhuang and let her understand that the other party wasn't really that bad. For a man, no matter what his mentality was, he should hope that the woman adored and admired him. Compared to being calm and self-restrained, the former would certainly make people happier. It wasn't to deliberately curry favor, but to let Jingwan have a trace of expectation and longing for the future instead of not having any hope in the beginning. She held on to her heart and didn't waver. If that was the case, even if there was a chance, she would miss out on happiness. At the same time, she wanted Jin Qinhuang to see the real Jingwan and not be completely affected by the dream. She wanted him to like her more, care more about her, and truly put her in his heart. Perhaps this was also the reason why old Madame Luo easily let Jin Qinhuang take Jingwan away last time, even though she knew that Jingwan might be bullied. For Jingwan to have a good future, old Madame Luo was really mentally and physically exhausted sometimes. Li Hongyuan could more or less understand old Madame Luo's thoughts. As a grandmother, to be able to do this much, it was really not an ordinary, kind of rare. Moreover, from what he understood, old Madame Luo had actually played the role of a mother. Being raised like a pearl or a treasure, Li Hongyuan found it hard to imagine. In his previous life, when Wanwan had defiled herself in order to get rid of the clan, and later on, when she had fallen into a difficult situation and experienced many hardships, and even died in the end, what kind of state was old Madame Luo in? Li Hongyuan got up, let's go. In her current state, she wouldn't be bullied. It didn't matter if she just walked. Seeing Li Hongyuan leisurely leave the carriages, Jingwan directly took the paper umbrella from Gong Momo's hands and held it herself as she followed. The servant girls naturally brought some things that could be used and followed closely behind. Behind them were Li Hongyuan's guards. It wasn't a small number of people, but it made Lu Qingdi frown. Zhongqing, take 10 people and follow. Yes, Your Majesty, the commander of the Imperial Guards replied. Then he selected 10 people. Lu Qingdi's care for Li Hongyuan was absolutely something that the other princes could only envy. If they were jealous every time, they would have gone crazy long ago. It would be best if the eyes didn't see, the heart didn't grieve over it. Thus, after hearing Lu Qingdi's words, the princes all lowered their heads to drink the fruit juice in unison, as if it was a supreme delicacy that could attract all of their attention. Unfortunately, they didn't realize their own actions. The people who saw it were all silent. To meet such a biased old man, they also sincerely wiped tears for these princes. They didn't say anything and just silently sympathized with them. As they walked further and further away, they were basically out of everyone's sight. Li Hongyuan walked slowly, and Jingwan's speed was definitely not fast. Thus, unless Li Hongyuan stopped himself, Jingwan would only fall behind him at a distance that was neither too close nor too far. Knowing that she did it on purpose, Li Hongyuan couldn't do anything about it. If the mountain didn't come to him, he could only go to the mountain. Li Hongyuan stopped and turned sideways with his hands clasped behind his back, looking straight at Jingwan. Jingwan didn't stop and directly walked in front of Li Hongyuan, casting a shadow on him. Your Highness. Li Hongyuan held out his hand. Jingwan was slightly startled. After a moment of hesitation, she passed the umbrella in her hand to him. After receiving the umbrella, Li Hongyuan turned and continued walking. This time, Jingwan obediently followed him. On the side where he held the umbrella, there was about a fist's distance between their arms. However, this distance seemed very intimate to the people behind them, so they unconsciously slowed down to give the two of them some space. Can the carriage still be used? Those good-for-nothings from the Ministry of Works only improved it a little after a few months. Hearing this, it was obvious that those people from the Ministry of Works had been bullied miserably. However, Jingwan probably wouldn't have thought that their misery was entirely caused by her motion sickness when she came to the capital. Your Highness is so kind. The carriage is many times more comfortable than the previous one. You're still not feeling well. Li Honyuan tilted his head to look at her and said, "What's with this feeling of, you're not feeling well, my heart aches?" Under his deep gaze, Jingwan felt her body go limp and numb. She tried her best to suppress the urge to escape. How could such a good carriage not be comfortable? Your Highness is worrying too much. Li Honyuan suddenly smiled and lowered his voice. Jiao Jiao is still the most honest in this prince's arms. Jingwan's face turned green and white. Bastard, if I didn't mention that matter, would you be like this? That's why, Jiao Jiao, you can be more honest in front of this prince. Otherwise, Jingwan subconsciously reached out to cover his unbridled eyes that seemed to be looking at her body through her clothes. She gritted her teeth in anger. Your Highness, please leave this subject's face. Li Honyuan held her hand and saw that she was really angry and hateful. If he continued to tease her, she would probably become angry. At that time, not only would his heart ache, but it would also create obstacles for him to pursue his wife. So, he had to stop before going too far. All right, don't be angry. It's this prince's fault. This prince is wrong. Let's not talk about it anymore. Jiao Jiao, calm down. If you apologize just because you want to, where's your dignity as a prince? Where's your bottom line? Has it been eaten by dogs? However, after he made such a fuss, she really couldn't get up. How did she meet such a fickle man? Her heart was tired. Li Honyuan kept his word and didn't bring up embarrassing topics. Instead, he casually chatted with Jingwan. He was really quite casual and said whatever came to his mind. And here, they talked about things from all over the world, history, culture, and even some local customs. Gradually, Jingwan became fascinated by the conversation. She even asked questions like and then from time to time. Li Honyuan looked at her sparkling little eyes. After reading so many books and knowing so many things, he actually felt the most accomplished at this moment. He really fell into her hands and would never be able to climb back up. When Jingwan pulled herself out of the situation and looked at Li Honyuan again, she felt that something was a little wrong. What happened to saying that he was useless except for his appearance? Not to mention that he was very knowledgeable and talented. It was impossible for him to be so comprehensive in such a short time. However, as long as she mentioned something, there was nothing that he didn't know. He could even say that she was most proficient in flowers and trees, and he definitely didn't make it up. Your Highness, you really are not a simple person. Really what? Li Honyuan asked with a smile, but he didn't seem to expect an answer from her. He looked at the small stream next to them. I won't let you be implicated by me and die in a few years. At least I can protect you for a lifetime of peace and happiness, and I can make the Luo family stand tall for 100 years. Jiao Jiao, how about we go to the other side? Jingwan came back to her senses. She really didn't understand this man at all. When he was bad, she simply wanted to bite him to death. When he was gentle, even someone like her couldn't help but tremble. From time to time, he would say something that would stir her heartstrings, but then he would immediately act as if nothing had happened. Who knew that it was never Li Honyuan who appeared to be right but was actually wrong? It was just that when he poured out his heart to her, she wouldn't believe him. Following his gaze, she looked over. Through here. The shallow stream was so clear that one could see the bottom. Large and small stones could be clearly seen. There were also small aquatic creatures that suddenly swayed their bodies, stirring up a small pool of muddy water. The place in front of them just happened to be divided into 2 layers. There were smooth stones on top, and one by one, they were exposed above the water surface. Presumably, someone had placed them there when they passed by. Do you want to go? There was also a forest on the other side. The trees were green and very attractive on this hot day. Okay. Li Honyuan casually threw away the umbrella in his hand. His long legs stepped to the stream and steadily stepped on the stones. He turned around to help Jingwan. Your Highness, please go first. This subject's daughter can do it on her own. Li Hongyuan just smiled faintly and persistently stretched out his hand. Jingwan shamelessly put her hand in his palm. Because of the weather, her body temperature was a little high, but she didn't feel sweaty. Thank you, Your Highness. I'm your fiancé. Wan, you don't have to be so polite. She restrained herself, but in the end, she didn't say it out loud. Li Hongyuan walked in front and carefully pulled her forward. Originally, one had outstanding martial arts skills, while the other had been exercising all year round. Their steps were very steady. If they had the courage, they could have easily walked over. However, the two of them held hands and walked with difficulty. In the end, they were both concerned about each other. Jingwan couldn't see in front of her. Every step she took, she followed Li Hongyuan's footsteps. Once, she stepped a little bit wrong and there was a bit of moss on the side. She slipped and was about to fall down. Be careful. Li Hongyuan put strength in his hand and quickly turned around. He grabbed Jingwan's waist and naturally fell down. However, the fault was actually less than 2 feet high. With Li Hongyuan's martial arts skills, he wouldn't let the two of them fall into the water in such a sorry state. When his feet submerged in the water, he had already firmly held Jingwan in his arms. Jingwan naturally wrapped her arms around his neck. Her face was close to his, and their breaths could touch. Jingwan slightly blushed. She thought, this guy didn't do it on purpose, did he? As for whether it was on purpose or not, only Li Hongyuan knew. Since his shoes and clothes were wet, he didn't care anymore. He carried Jingwan through the water. The remaining 2/3 of the journey was much faster than the previous 1/3 of the journey. In the depths of the forest, a pair of demon-like eyes stared fixedly at the two of them who were acting intimately. There were several times when she was ready to break free from the shackles of reason and tear the two of them to pieces. The servant girl next to her seemed to be standing calmly, but her hands were faintly trembling, indicating her true emotions. Return. It was only one word, but it was hoarse and unpleasant, as if his throat was broken. He was just in a bad mood and wanted to avoid her for a while. How could he let her see such a scene? He was really treating her like this because of her. He had never taken the initiative to approach the previous few women or cared about them. Now, he was so careful to protect her. Was it because she was his fiancée? Was it because he was moved after the engagement? Who was he trying to fool? Li Hongyuan, you deceived everyone. You schemed against everyone. You even used me. Just for her, right? Good, very good. I want to tear you all to pieces. No, you care so much about her. I want you to see with your own eyes how she is humiliated. I want to make her dirty and lowly. Let's see if you still care about her. However, I should repay you first. It's good if you succeed, but it doesn't matter if you don't succeed. When they reached the shore, he put Jingwan down. There were only a few drops of water splashed on her body, so it was impossible to see. Your Highness, why don't we go back first? It's definitely uncomfortable to wear wet clothes. It's okay. Someone will go back and get clothes for me. How could he be so insensible when he followed him? Let's go. He didn't hesitate and directly took Jingwan's hand. Just as they were leaving, he slightly narrowed his eyes and glanced at a certain place. The grass was green and there were some wild flowers mixed in. The colors were quite colorful. Walking along a stream, Jingwan broke a branch and played with it. She was a little lost in thought. Jiao, what are you thinking about? Li Hongyuan asked. Your Highness, HM? Actually, this subject is not used to you calling me Qin Jiao. In fact, not being used to it was secondary. The most important thing was that it made her involuntarily think of the origin of this name. It was so embarrassing. Then what do you think I should call you? Jingwan hesitated for a moment. Just call me Jingwan. Okay. Li Hongyuan nodded without hesitation. I'll do whatever you say. How could she not be like this? You haven't told me what you were thinking about just now. Li Hongyuan didn't seem to notice her little struggle. I was just thinking that at this time in the past, I would be running around in Qi and Manor, catching fish in the water, picking fruits in the trees, and hunting in the forest. I would be so dirty that I would look like a wild girl. However, grandmother has never restrained me. She said that a girl's happiness was limited to the years before she got married. Therefore, after I learned what I needed to learn, the rest is up to me to do as I please. That kind of carefree days was really something that she missed very much. However, catching fish was actually just for fun. There was no need to bring out the fishing skills from her previous life. Why did you say that? What? Jingwan didn't understand. Why did you tell me this? Don't girls pay attention to chastity, gentleness, and dignity? Jingwan smiled. Your Highness cares a lot? Then what should I do? Your Highness won't dislike me so much, right? Jingwan didn't really care about this point. Even if he said that she was unruly and improper. So what? In the future, even if she didn't act wildly like before, she wasn't a real good girl. She couldn't always wear a disguise. This prince is very happy. She couldn't keep up with his thoughts at all. Jingwan, it's good that you're like this. Even if you marry this prince, you can still be like this. If you don't feel comfortable in the manor, you can go to the manor. You can stay as long as you want and play as you want. Jingwan didn't care. After becoming a princess, how could she be so casual? It was good enough that she could do as she pleased in the manor. Jingwan didn't believe it, and Li Honyuan didn't emphasize it. At that point, the truth would be revealed. There was a slight movement behind her. Jingwan turned around to take a look. This speed was really fast. Your Highness, change your clothes first. Taking advantage of his slightly loosened hand, Jingwan took back her hand. Li Honyuan nodded and glanced at her fingertips. He casually found an open space nearby and pulled up a curtain. Without waiting on anyone, Li Honyuan quickly changed his clothes. Although his back was to her, the slight rustling of clothes made her unexpectedly think of his perfect figure, and she couldn't help blushing. Jingwan patted her face. She was becoming more and more lustful. If it weren't for Jingwan, Li Honyuan wouldn't use a curtain at all. Even so, it only covered his chest. Therefore, he saw Jingwan's movements and her red ears. However, in this place, this scene was teasing her. She would definitely be angry. The atmosphere was good, and it wouldn't be good if she messed it up. So, she had to pretend that she didn't see anything. After changing his clothes, she gently walked behind Jingwan. It's done. The voice was so close to her ear that she seemed to feel the warmth brushing against her ear. Jingwan was shocked. Li Honyuan chuckled. You're so timid. Bastard. Was this a problem of being timid? Li Honyuan touched her face. The scenery is good, and it's shady. Why don't you sit for a while? Jingwan wanted to avoid it, but it was too late. She could only nod. Then, the curtain that Li Honyuan used to change his clothes was spread on the ground. So, Bai Xiao and the others, who were standing not far away, didn't go forward. Li Honyuan sat down casually with one leg stretched out and the other bent. One of his elbows was propped up on the ground, and he was half lying down. He pointed at the spot beside him, indicating for Jingwan to sit down. Jingwan sat down, also looking quite casual. She hugged her knees and looked at the slowly flowing stream. In Qian Prefecture, we catch fish in the water and roast it directly. I haven't eaten it for a long time. Isn't it simple? Moo. And hurry up and do it. Yes. Jingwan tilted her head and looked at him, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. What should we do now? She felt like a demon concubine who was looking for trouble. However, Eunuch Mu seemed to be very enthusiastic and happy. Digression. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/66531158. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com, Bikuga mobile reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 169. Jingwan didn't know that for the people around Li Hongyuan, the opportunity to please her was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. After all, if one were to get on the good side of the future mistress, if one were to accidentally do something wrong, one word from her and nothing would happen to that person. If one were to gain her favor, they would be able to change their status and rise to the top. Compared to others, they would have to work a few years less. These were all great benefits. Moreover, the prince didn't stop them from doing so. On the contrary, sometimes, he even showed a gesture to let them do it actively. In this way, who wouldn't rush up? If they didn't work hard, what if someone else beat them to it? They couldn't even cry. However, this work couldn't be done by Eunuch Mu alone. He couldn't go into the water to catch fish, and he didn't carry any seasonings for roasting fish, so he had to share the work with the guards. As for why the guards had seasonings for roasting fish, he could tell you that as the head of the guards and also the head of the secret guards, he had to go out for missions from time to time, so he had been forced to form a habit. Of course, there were seasonings for roasting meat everywhere. Speaking of which, roasting meat should be similar to roasting fish, right? In short, he must have some necessary things in the wild that couldn't be found anywhere else. Therefore, even if Eunuch Mu was robbed of most of the credit, he could only pinch his nose and accept it. Jingwan's maids didn't rest. They went into the woods, quickly picked up a pile of dry wood, set it up, and made a fire. Not to mention that Bai Xiao and Hei Mei used to go out in the woods, so this kind of thing was just a child's play. Even Jingwan's original 4 maids, who followed Jingwan in Qi Mansion, did a lot of this kind of thing. Therefore, when they did it, it really couldn't be seen that they were the head maids of the inner residence. It should be known that the head maids of a big family were more well off than many pretty girls of small families. The stream in front of them was not deep, so naturally, they couldn't expect to catch any big fish. It was good enough that they could catch some. However, it was clear that Yi's fishing skills weren't maxed out yet, let alone the others, who were just guards. It was not easy to find a trace of the fish, but they were unable to catch the fish even after chasing and intercepting it. They even stirred up the water, and even the shadow of the fish could not be seen. The master and mistress were watching from the side. Not only did she fail to show off her skills, but she also felt awkward. Idiot, Li Hongyuan said indifferently, but he did not directly flip out. Jingwan glanced at Li Hongyuan. How could he talk to his own people like that? They would follow you around all day long to ensure your safety. Even if they didn't contribute anything, they would at least be rewarded for their hard work. Besides, they were just guards and not omnipotent. Forget it if you can't catch it. All of you, come up. She was just a little nostalgic. It was not like she was hungry for food. Li Hongyuan naturally wouldn't refute Jingwan's words. He looked away. This group of idiots, after getting benefits today, he was afraid that they would want to please Wan even more. However, seeing that the idiots were still standing in the water, looking at each other, and then carefully looking at him, waiting for him to speak, they really became more and more stupid. Are you deaf? Didn't you hear? Very good. The conclusion was out. In the future, they would follow the mistress's words as the first standard. However, the shoes and socks were all wet, and the clothes were half wet. Even in the summer, it was not restrained to wear them. But obviously, they could only endure it at this time. For them, it was not a big deal. If you want to ask, why didn't they take off their shoes and socks before going into the water? He, being indecent in front of the mistress, did they want to die? Miss, why don't you let this servant do it? Hei Mei volunteered and looked at Jingwan with some expectation. The 2 sisters used to grow up in the mountains. They were free and happy. Perhaps they had not enjoyed it since they began to wander about. After so many years, they were afraid that they had been suppressing it for a long time. Although it was a little inappropriate, what was wrong with letting them indulge once in a while? Jingwan chuckled. Okay, go ahead. Hei Mei was excited. She quickly walked to the stream, squatted down, pressed her hand on the ground, and jumped steadily into the water. Her feet touched the surface of the water, and she unconsciously curved her lips. Obviously, she missed and enjoyed this feeling very much. Unintentionally, her nature was released to a greater extent. that kind of wild and flamboyant charm. With a relatively unique beauty, Jingwan believed that there were few men who would not be attracted to her. When Jingwan realized this, her heart thumped. She subconsciously looked at Li Hongyuan, but unexpectedly met those eyes that were like stars after dispersing the darkness. It seemed that when she did not know, he had been looking at her so attentively, which made Jingwan unable to help but blush a little. After meeting this bastard from time to time, she would be teased until her face and ears turned red. Sure enough, she was also a person who could not avoid the vulgar appearance. Li Hongyuan curved his lips and smiled. Jingwan, what were you thinking about just now? Nothing. Could she say that she was worried that he had ideas about her maid? It must be said that Li Hongyuan's eyes had been on Jingwan's face the whole time. His reaction at that moment was simply too obvious. How could Li Hongyuan not know what she was thinking? His eyes fell on He Mei, who was already looking for a target in the water. According to her previous appearance, Li Hongyuan originally intended to send her to Wan Wan's side. However, her martial arts were indeed better than her sister's, and better than the other maids who were specially trained. He also thought that Wan Wan was not such a superficial person. For the time being, he would send her to take a look. If he really did not like her, he would change her. However, Wan Wan was indeed different. She could be said to have turned something rotten into something magical. This might be an exaggeration, but it was an indisputable fact that the originally somewhat unsightly person had become a different kind of beauty. Your maidservant is very beautiful. Your Highness is too kind. Jingwan's voice was a little cold. How about giving her to me? Li Hongyuan said with some interest. Wishful thinking. Jingwan's voice was not a little cold, but absolutely cold. Even her eyes were icy. But because she was angry, she did not notice that there was no emotion in his eyes. Those who did not know were sweating for Jingwan, especially a few maids who quickly surrounded Li Hongyuan. It seemed that if Li Hongyuan dared to make a move, they would fight him to the death. He Mei in the water also looked like she would explode at any time. However, there was still a little helplessness in her expression. After all, she was the one who caused the dispute between the girl and the future son-in-law. And those who knew could not help but wipe the sweat from the bottom of their hearts. Master, you have angered Miss Luo. When she treats you coldly, you will definitely not bear to do anything to her. At that time, the one who will suffer is still yourself, and the ones who will suffer more will also be us. You are already covered in dirty water. If you want to wash it clean, you don't know how long you will have to wait. Please don't die, and please let us go. Is this vinegar? Li Hongyuan did not seem to see their reaction as he calmly looked at her. Your Highness should not think too highly of yourself. Jingwan sneered. Jingwan's attitude made the commander of the Imperial Guards, who was standing not far away, unable to help but look over. The Jin Qinhuang, who was unbelievably gentle to his fiancée, made him quite surprised. However, as the commander of the Imperial Guards, he had been in the palace for a long time and had a deeper impression of Jin Qinhuang's temperament. Going head-on with him was definitely not a wise choice. He could not help but break out in cold sweat for Jingwan. However, he had his own responsibilities. This was not something that he should care about, nor was it something that he could care about. After all, this was a matter between the fiancé and fiancée. If you, a male outsider, got involved, it would only make things worse. Doing bad things with pure good intentions. Tisk, Jingwan doesn't care about herself, but is worried that the servant girl will be ruined by Ben Wang. Although he already knew that this would be the result, his heart was still a little bitter. He also thought that he had experienced everything, including death. His heart would not be hurt anymore. In fact, ever since he started over, there was really no one who could shake him in the slightest. He had long been prepared to grind with Jingwan to death. In this process, no matter what she did, she would not be able to hurt him. However, in the end, he still overestimated himself and underestimated the influence that Jingwan had on him. Li Hongyuan's words made Jingwan's anger subside slightly. Then, she discovered that his expression was a little wrong. He was still at him, but she felt that he was a little hurt. Was it an illusion? Jingwan has never seen me before. Regarding my matters, she also heard it from other people's mouths. They all say that seeing is believing and hearing is false. Not to mention, sometimes, what you see may not be true, so how can you jump to conclusions? I thought that you should be different from others. Is it wishful thinking? It's probably true. This weak attitude made Jingwan at a loss in an instant. This script changed too quickly. She was a little unable to catch it. Li Hongyuan reached out to touch her face. She didn't know what kind of mentality she had, but Jingwan didn't avoid it. Li Hongyuan smiled. I'm just joking with you. You took it seriously. I'll leave for a while. Li Hongyuan stood up and left without stopping. Soon, his figure was blocked by the trees. Jingwan frowned. Getting along with Jin Qinhuang, she always felt that something was wrong. Even if she told herself to let nature take its course and not think too much, sometimes it was hard to not think too much. Following Li Hongyuan, an E and the commander of the Imperial Guards also left. In this wilderness, no one knew if there would be an accident. Although there weren't so many accidents in the world, but everything should be prepared. If something happened to Jin Qinhuang, even if they had 10 heads, they still wouldn't be able to bear it. When they chased after him, they only saw Li Hongyuan's cold and stern figure standing with his hands behind his back. The two people subconsciously paused. They felt that the living king of hell, right now, was a real living king of hell. Just the figure of his back made people's scalp numb. Li Hongyuan turned around, and the two people subconsciously knelt on one knee. With the most respectful attitude, they waited for his orders. As it turned out, Li Hongyuan's mood was quite bad right now. The hostility seemed to be substantial, and he himself seemed to be somewhat unable to suppress it. Jingwan's words at first were only a little bitter, but that feeling didn't disappear so quickly. Instead, it became more and more intense. But now he actually couldn't say what kind of feeling it was. If he didn't leave quickly, he was worried that he would do something irreparable to Jingwan. Although, it certainly wouldn't hurt her. Li Hongyuan suppressed his impulse to kick the two people in front of him to death, thoroughly investigate the forest. Yes, the two people didn't dare to neglect. No matter what the reason was, in short, the current him couldn't be provoked. When they left Li Hongyuan's line of sight, their taut nerves relaxed a little. The sixth prince, Jin Qinhuang, was ruthless and temperamental. The commander of the Imperial Guards had never experienced it more deeply than at this moment. It turned out that when he was in the palace, he had already restrained himself a lot. He glanced at an E. Following this kind of master, he really couldn't help but feel pity for him. An E saw his expression in his eyes. Pity me, you should take care of yourself. As the commander of the Imperial Guards, do you think Master will let you go? Just wait. One day, you will be in the same abyss of suffering as me. Wang Ye can't lack people by his side. I will take people to investigate the situation in the forest. The commander said, not giving an E a chance to refuse. An E didn't insist and stayed in place. Looking back, he faintly saw that Master was still standing in the same place. Sure enough, it was normal for Master to be like this. Just now, when facing the future Wang Fei, the person who was a little hurt, a little wronged, and also showed weakness was definitely not their wise and powerful master. Well, he was master. It was just that their eyes were playing tricks on them. Hei Mei stood in the water, not knowing whether to continue or not. Miss, Jingwan smiled. Have you found the target? Miss, I am waiting to eat fish. Hei Mei became spirited again. Miss, wait. As long as there is fish in the water, you will be able to eat it. Jingwan showed an expectant expression. As if she thought of something, she looked back and found Bai Xiao. She was the same as Qin Zhu, belonging to the more calm type. However, Jingwan felt that her mind should have the same idea as Hei Mei. So, Bai Xiao, go down and help Hei Mei. This way, it will be faster. Yes. Bai Xiao's eyes flashed with slight surprise, but in the end, she wasn't as excited as Hei Mei. The two sisters were used to working together. Even if they didn't say anything, they seemed to have a tacit understanding. Even if it was muddy water, nothing could be seen clearly. After feeling around, Hei Mei suddenly raised her hand. A fish that was only about 3 fingers wide swayed its tail between her hands, its gills constantly opening and closing. Li Hongyuan's guards silently covered their faces. So shameful. Several big men couldn't even compare to 2 delicate girls. The main purpose of catching fish was to satisfy Jingwan's craving. Whatever their master ate, at most, Jin Qinhuang would taste it. Therefore, they caught 4 fish. And it was because they weren't big, otherwise, at most, they would have caught 2. The 2 people went ashore and walked upstream along the shore for a while. They cleaned the fish in the clear water and brought it back. Then, they rinsed it with the water in the water sack. After cutting the branches, they strung them up and roasted them on the fire. It was Qing Zhu's turn. While flipping, she sprinkled the seasoning on it. Soon, the aroma overflowed. Mu Gongong looked and really wanted to die. Before, he thought that it was a good opportunity to curry favor with his female master. Now, it seemed that it was simply a disgrace. Look at her. That was a considerate and good servant. Just now, they were actually seen as a joke by her. Jingwan was also quite speechless. She followed her out for a stroll. There was a mat, that was easy to say. She might even need to sit down. There was a water sack, that was also easy to say. It was normal to be thirsty and want to drink water on a hot day. However, this dagger, this barbecue seasoning, and the fire starter from before, was it necessary to be so complete? Why did you think of taking these? Qing Zhu's nose twitched. Qing Zhu Jieji's barbecue was fragrant. It was Mama who asked me to bring it. She said that it was just in case. It was really, should it be said that she was worthy of being called Mama? She was really amazing. Hei Mei and Baishao go back and change clothes first. Jingwan said. In fact, she wanted to let Li Hongyuan's guards go back. However, they weren't her people, so it wasn't good to exceed her authority. It's okay, Mississippi. It's hot. Just shake it by the fire and it will dry in a while. It's not good to wear it and dry it. The moisture will be on the body. It doesn't matter now, but when you get old, you will suffer. Jingwan disagreed. In fact, Jingwan wanted to go back directly, but looking at Jin Qinhuang, who was still nowhere to be seen, it didn't seem good to just leave like this. Moreover, the fish had just been roasted. If they just left like this, wouldn't it be a waste of their hard work? Qing Zhu thought about it and raised her head. Several Dage's bodies are also wet. It would be better to find a place to start a fire to roast. This was a suggestion, but also to drive them away. Thus, the few people quickly rolled away. In any case, there were still Imperial guards nearby. They only needed to stay a little further away and avoid them. The group of men left, and a fire was quickly started at the side. The sisters took off their shoes and socks, leaving only their dresses and trousers. They weren't wet much and were basically dry now. Even if they weren't dry, they couldn't take them off and roast them here. It didn't take long for them to quickly tidy up. The roasted fish in Qing Zhu's hands was also done. The skin was roasted to a golden yellow, but it wasn't burnt at all. Then she saw Qing Zhu take out a plate somewhere. Looking at that posture, was she going to take the fish down, peel the skin, and pick out the bones, and then let her enjoy it in a reserved and elegant manner? Jingwan's forehead was filled with black lines. She directly took the branch in Qing Zhu's hands and took a bite of the fish's back. Roasted like this, eating like this is more interesting. Jingwan was the master. If she wanted to eat like this, then eat like this. In any case, there were no outsiders here. As for whether or not they would be seen in the dark, who cares? As long as her family's miss felt comfortable and happy, it was fine. Jingwan quickly finished the fish. Even if the fish was relatively small, she still left behind a relatively complete skeleton. The taste is really good. Jingwan actually wanted them to taste it. Unfortunately, each and every one of them was very disciplined. Jingwan wiped her mouth and washed her hands. That Yi still wasn't coming back. If it was said that Li Hongyuan's previous reaction that Jingwan didn't care at all, it must be fake. After hesitating for a moment, she still decided to go and take a look. I'll go take a look, you don't have to follow. But miss, The mama told them to keep an eye on Miss at all times. They couldn't be too far away, let alone out of their line of sight. Jingwan waved her hand. Don't worry, there are a lot of people nearby. There will definitely be no problem. She seemed to sigh helplessly. I made people unhappy. Naturally, I have to coax them back. Jingwan clapped her hands and went to the place where Li Honyuan had left. Not long after, Jingwan saw a figure. Looking at the clothes, it should be Jin Qinwan's guard. That person was standing with his back to Jingwan. When he heard a slight sound, he immediately turned back. When he saw Jingwan, his heart trembled. Miss Luo, it's inconvenient for Master to go back at this time. Jingwan stopped, her heart slightly moved. There seemed to be some abnormal sounds in the forest ahead. What was going on? However, since the guard was stopping her, Jingwan naturally wouldn't continue to rush over. Just as she was about to turn and leave, a black shadow rushed over here. Even if she didn't know what was going on, Jingwan knew that it was not good. Without saying anything, she turned and ran. Jingwan had never been a real delicate Mississippi. Therefore, when she ran, her speed wasn't just staggering. Stepping on branches and stones could cause her to trip and fall. That guard wasn't someone to be trifled with either. He pulled out his sword and slashed at the black shadow. The two people were soon engaged in a battle. However, it was clear that his skills were a notch higher. However, even so, he still couldn't get away. The two Imperial guards nearby also caught up. In a 3-against-1 situation, the man in black was more than enough to deal with one. Against two, he would be at a disadvantage, not to mention 3. However, before those two people could catch up, the man in black suddenly took out something from his waist. That was clearly a crossbow. Sacrificing an arm to deal with the guard, he aimed at Jingwan and pulled the trigger. Wanwan, be careful. That panic cry even carried a mournful cry. Jingwan didn't even think and didn't care about the situation on the ground. Her foot slipped and she rolled. With a swoosh, the sound of something breaking through the air came from above. Jingwan saw an arrow firmly nailed to a tree, half of it embedded in it. https://www.beacon.com/11/11807/66531159. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. Exempt from registration. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.beacon.com. Biku Go Mobile Reading Website, mbeacon.com. Chapter 170. Jingwan's heart was filled with lingering fear. At the same time, she was extremely glad that the way she dodged was correct. She was even more glad that she wasn't raised to be a waste, like an ordinary girl in the boudoir. Not to mention other things, if her reaction was slow, the result could be imagined. Jingwan turned her head to look at Li Hongyuan's side. The next moment, her pupils violently contracted, because Jin Qinwang grabbed the hair of the already subdued, black-clothed man with one hand, while the other hand held a dagger. It circled around the man's neck and slowly, but powerfully slid past. Perhaps because he used too much force, or perhaps because the dagger was too sharp, blood spurted out. Even if Jin Qinwang was standing behind him, his body was not stained with blood for a while, but that hand was not spared. But he didn't seem to have the slightest reaction, like a god of death who had frozen all 7 emotions and 6 desires, concentrating on reaping lives. The black-clothed man's head was separated from his body, and he, like throwing away garbage, casually threw away the dagger and the head. Really, it was no different from the small things he casually threw away on a daily basis. The headless corpse was quickly pulled to one side, just because it blocked his path. The bodyguards cleared the obstacles at the first moment. Li Honyuan walked with steady steps, step by step, towards Jingwan. Jingwan's elbow propped on the ground, wanting to get up, but she found that her body was stiff and somewhat unable to move. She didn't know that her face was deathly pale, showing obvious fear. Don't blame her psychological endurance for being poor. After all, It was the first time she saw such a scene. It was impossible for a normal person to not have any reaction. More importantly, Jin Qinhuang at this time was really too frightening. In her eyes, the world had faded, leaving only this man, a man who was like a god of death. Every step stepped on her heart, causing her heart to bear great pressure, as if half of it was being crushed. When there was something strange on her body, Jingwan was fiercely startled and was immediately helped up. Miss. It turned out that her several servant girls had rushed over at the fastest speed. Although they didn't see what exactly happened, but looking at Jingwan's state, looking at the King of Hell's imposing manner of Jin Qinhuang, as well as the scene of Azura behind him, they couldn't help but stiffen, and a chill ran down their backs. Even if Blackie and Bai Xiao had slaughtered a lot of prey, this person was different after all, not to mention Qingzhu and the other maidservants who had never seen blood. Li Hongyuan didn't walk fast, but judging from his footsteps, he still had the same leisurely posture as when he was strolling with Jingwan. When he got closer, the maids protected Jingwan and retreated. Jingwan forced herself not to look at the scene behind him. She took a few deep breaths and tried to calm herself down. This person came for her. Jin Qinhuang had avenged her. Jingwan retreated 2 steps and stopped, hinting the servant girls in front of her to move back. Although she was intimidated by his imposing manner, she still met his eyes that didn't miss her face. The hostility didn't disperse. The ferocity didn't diminish. However, in his eyes, Jingwan only saw herself. Wang Ye, Wan is afraid of me. Li Hongyuan's voice was a bit hoarse, simply and straightforwardly stating a fact. He reached out as if he wanted to touch her face. However, his hand reached out halfway and retracted because his hand was covered in blood. Jingwan's lips moved, wanting to say something, but Li Hongyuan suddenly brushed past her. Jingwan was slightly startled and hastily turned around. Wang Ye, Li Hongyuan paused but didn't stop. It must be said that Jingwan wasn't a person who ate a meal. It must be said that when Li Hongyuan left, something was wrong. Now it was even more wrong. Before it was because of her, and now it seemed that it was still because of her. Jingwan subconsciously chased after him, temporarily forgetting the mess behind her. However, whether it was the guards or the Imperial Guards, even if they hadn't seen this bloody scene, they were still men in the end. Moreover, they had all been through strict training. Even if their faces were a bit off, they wouldn't be afraid. What really made them apprehensive was Li Hongyuan himself. Even if an E had seen Li Hongyuan's true nature, he still felt his legs go soft because of Li Hongyuan's terrifying, imposing manner. The closer he got, the stronger the oppressive feeling. As the commander of the Imperial Guards, although he had already seen Li Hongyuan's bad temper, it was still within the range of tolerance. Unlike this time, there was a moment when he felt that he had one foot in the gates of hell. At this moment, when Li Hongyuan had walked far away and disappeared, he felt that he was still alive. However, looking at the corpse in front of them, the 2 people couldn't help but look at each other. Out of nowhere, there was an assassination attempt. Moreover, it was very obvious that this assassination attempt was made at the last minute. Moreover, the target was Luo San, Mississippi. No, it should be said that it was mainly Luo San Miss, and Jin Qinhuang seemed to be venting his anger. Incidentally, if it could succeed, if it couldn't, it didn't matter, no matter how one looked at it. It made people feel very strange. There was a corpse in front of them, and there were 2 more in the forest behind them. Because Li Hongyuan had sensed something strange from the beginning, because his mood wasn't good, he temporarily left and let them investigate. Unexpectedly, they found that something was wrong. 3 black-clothed men appeared out of nowhere. Because their whereabouts were exposed, they actually wanted to withdraw. Unfortunately, even if their martial arts were high, they couldn't stop the pursuit and interception of several times more well-trained people. Moreover, because Jin Qinhuang was in a bad mood, he needed to dispatch people. It was even more impossible for the 3 people to escape and naturally became the target of his venting. Li Hongyuan fought 1 against 3. The others seemed to be loosely surrounded in all directions, but it let these 3 people clearly know that their escape route was blocked. Therefore, even if Li Hongyuan wasn't their main target, They didn't hold back. However, when they really fought, they then realized how terrifying this Jin Qinhuang, who was said to have no good points other than his skin, was. What was valiant was not only his skill, but also that suffocating aura. Moreover, he clearly had the opportunity to kill them in one blow, but he tortured them to death. They clearly knew that they were mice under a cat's paw, but they didn't dare to struggle. For them, death was nothing. They had already prepared to die a long time ago. However, they were very unreconciled that they couldn't complete the task. But at this time, the target delivered himself to their doorstep. Therefore, of the three people, two desperately blocked Li Hongyuan, and the other rushed toward Jingwan. When the black-clothed man shot an arrow, he also had one of his arms chopped off. He knew that his head would be cut off soon after, but as long as the task was completed, it would be worth it. However, the arrow that he thought would definitely hit the target was dodged. Without hesitation, and the reaction was swift, when the black-clothed man's head was cut off while he was still alive, he stared unwaveringly at the unscathed Jingwan, and then died with his eyes wide open. The corpse had to be disposed of, and they also had to search nearby to see if there were any clues. Li Hongyuan returned to the stream and waded into the water. He very seriously washed the blood off his hands and body. Jingwan stood on the shore and looked at him. On such a hot day, she inexplicably felt a little gloomy and cold. The servant girls plucked the grass off her body, but she didn't even realize it. Li Hongyuan went ashore and carefully wiped off the water droplets. When he stood in front of Jingwan again, he basically couldn't smell the blood, but the terrifying aura on his body didn't decrease, but instead increased. Even so, Jingwan knew that he wouldn't hurt her, so she still bravely met his gaze. On the contrary, if she avoided him out of fear, he might really do something terrible. It was such a strange feeling. "Your Highness." Li Hongyuan suddenly held her face and directly kissed her. Anxious and impatient, he may have ignored the others, but Jingwan did not. Moreover, they were standing right behind him. In his previous life, couples kissing in public would attract the attention of the surrounding people, let alone couples holding hands in public. It would be inappropriate for them to be scolded for being inappropriate in ancient times. Jingwan couldn't help but subconsciously struggle. However, Jingwan's struggle seemed to have stimulated him. His hand suddenly slid down her neck and tightly held her waist, as if he wanted to rub her into his bones and blood. Jingwan also realized that the more she struggled, the harder he used. Her waist was about to break from the strangulation. This man was like a beast that had lost its mind, and was very possessive. Jingwan thought of the night when he was injured under the cliff of White Dragon Temple. He only hugged and kissed her, and didn't do anything more. So she stopped struggling and let him kiss her. In order to calm him down, she even put her hands around his waist and gently stroked it. Thus, this scene made Jingwan's servant girls blush. They quickly retreated a few steps, and their eyes drifted, not daring to look at the two of them. The Yulin army commander arranged for a few people to stay behind to deal with the corpses, while the others dutifully continued to guard. But they didn't expect to see such a fiery scene when they arrived. It made each and every one of the big men very embarrassed. Then they retreated further away, letting themselves hide in the forest and disappear. However, many people muttered in their hearts. Should they say, as expected of Jin Qinhuang? He was extraordinary. Jingwan only felt that her lips were a little numb. Li Hongyuan then released her. Even so, his lips were still attached to hers. "Wanwan, don't be afraid of me. Even if I kill people like scything flax, I won't hurt a single strand of your hair." As he spoke, his lips opened and closed, brushing against Jingwan's lips. Jingwan didn't know what to say, so she just responded. She knew that what he said was true. Li Hongyuan just hugged her. "Do you know, I almost lost you again." At that moment, my heart almost jumped out. Fortunately you escaped, otherwise, https://www.bicon.com/11/11807/66536161. HTML chapter error. Click here to report exempt from registration. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, Please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com, Bikaga mobile reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 171. However, just let it be. When you don't care about others, you naturally don't have to care about how others think of you in their hearts, although this other person is the person you will get along with day and night in the future. However, even if it was a transfer of affection, there were some things that she actually benefited from. Jingwan was never a heartless person. As long as he didn't cross her bottom line, then as long as he treated her well, no, as long as he didn't treat her particularly badly, she could be a good wife. Moreover, the feelings that she reciprocated might not necessarily be love. Obviously, what happened just now had stimulated this living hell. Now, he was holding her tightly and wouldn't let go. Jingwan obediently let him hold her. Putting aside the fact that he occasionally made people feel ashamed and resentful, purely as a lover, this person was really impeccable. What's more, he was so hot that he let people see the scene. At this moment, Jingwan didn't care about being held. Moreover, if this could make him less terrifying and let him be comforted, Jingwan would accept it if he took advantage of her. However, was the one in his heart already gone? Thinking about it, according to this person's temperament and power, if it wasn't the separation of life and death, how could it be called lost and left? There was a saying that the living could never compete with the dead. Jingwan was glad that she didn't think of competing. Otherwise, she didn't know what kind of virtue she would have made. Jingwan continued to stroke his back to comfort him and didn't say a word. Under the premise of not understanding the situation, it was often wrong to say more. Jingwan didn't want to be the understanding flower. However, it was a certain someone who knew the essence of taking a mile after taking an inch. When he found that his panic and weakness made Jingwan's heart soften, he hugged her and let go. With a hot start, he became unscrupulous. Except for his hands that didn't go too far, his mouth didn't stop. Jingwan was fine. She was not injured or sick in his arms. Even if the fear in her heart were still there, the reason that she almost lost gradually came back. Seeing that they had been seen, there was no difference whether it was once or many times. As the culprit who caused her to be like this, naturally, she had to make up for it. Therefore, a certain someone was well versed in playing the blame game. Even if Jingwan was dizzy from his kiss and did not notice it for a while, because she was worried about his condition, she always maintained a bit of rationality. After a long time, it was difficult for her not to notice his condition. Well, he could be said to be insatiable. Other than him, there was no one else. Therefore, she should not be soft-hearted to this kind of person. Would a person like him be fragile? Why would he need someone to comfort him? Stop joking. Therefore, Jingwan did not hesitate to pinch his waist. In any case, it wasn't the first time he had offended his superiors, and he didn't seem to do anything about it. This bad habit was also caused by him. Jingwan's realization was something worth celebrating for a certain someone. This could be considered a historical improvement. Li Hongyuan was suddenly pinched. Even if his skin was rough and his flesh was thick, Jingwan did not really want to kill him. It would still hurt. She even deliberately hissed twice to gain sympathy. Before Jingwan could realize whether it was true or not, she subconsciously removed her strength. He grabbed her hand on his waist, leaned his forehead against hers, and laughed in a low voice. "Kind darling, are you feeling sorry for me?" The words "kind darling" evoked the pain in Jingwan's heart. She pushed him away with a dark face. She would rather face the guy who was like the dark devil than face this shameless bastard who took the opportunity to tease her. "You are really heartless. You throw me away after using me." Jingwan gritted her teeth and looked at him. "No one will think you are mute if you don't speak." Li Hongyuan could not help but want to touch her face again. This time, Jingwan quickly blocked him. Li Hongyuan was not angry. He still smiled seductively. "You seem to be in good spirits. It seems that you are not frightened." Jingwan paused. Her face was a little pale. Her lips moved, but she did not say anything. Li Hongyuan took the opportunity to kiss her again. Li Hongyuan, Jingwan could not help but explode. Then she realized the current situation. This bastard. Sure enough, it is better this way. This time it is my fault. I promise that these clowns will not appear in front of you again. Also, don't be afraid of me. From a bit of teasing to an indescribably gentle and affectionate. When you go back, drink a bowl of calming soup, and then sleep. Forget about this. If he held it tightly and did not mention it, he might forget. It might also take root in his heart and sprout in the future. It was better to open it up now and tell her that it was nothing. Tell her that she did not need to care. He did not know how she endured the first time she killed someone in her previous life. In short, it must not have felt good. He did not know whether the impact of killing someone for the first time was greater, or the impact of seeing someone else kill someone for the first time was greater. He did not know. Those had all happened in his previous life. It had been too long, and he had long forgotten such small things. He clearly knew that she was watching. He clearly knew that he might scare her, but he still did it without hesitation. Perhaps it was not only because of extreme anger and fear, but also because he wanted to let her see the complete him. If he was willing, he could let her see only the good side of him. If he was not complete, no matter how perfect he was, it would still be a lie, and a lie. So, Wan, don't be afraid of me. Your fear and resistance will make me do things that are out of my control. I might even hurt you. That will take my life. And when I die, I will definitely drag you down with me. As for the wrong place, it was probably giving them the opportunity to hurt her. Fortunately, she was fine. Otherwise, Li Hongyuan would definitely not care about anything and immediately exterminate the Ruan clan, flay some people, pull out their tendons, grind their bones, and scatter their ashes. Looking at her for a moment, he tilted his head. The gentleness in his eyes disappeared without a trace. Yu Zhongqing, send her back. If there is even the slightest mishap, bring your head to see me. The Imperial Guard commander did not dare to neglect and hurriedly appeared, asking Wang Ye to rest assured. Regardless of whether Jin Qinhuang wanted to send him away or for other reasons, with his valiant skills, his bodyguards were also not bad. He really did not need protection. Moreover, this kind of temporary assassination, there should not be a second time. Li Hongyuan looked at Jingwan again. You go back first, I will deal with the matters here. Remember, today's assassination, you were only implicated by Ben Wang. As for the person behind the scenes, Ben Wang will definitely get to the bottom of it. This person was like this. One moment he was still flirting, and the next moment he was deadpan. Everything he did was for you, making you lose your temper. If you really insisted on being angry with him, in the end, you would probably be the only one angry. So she nodded, Wang Ye, be careful. Li Hongyuan nodded, don't worry, Ben Wang has not married you yet. Jingwan directly ignored him. Brushing past him, she directly left. Unlike when she came, she was leisurely and unhurriedly, as if she wanted to quickly avoid him, this god of pestilence. It could be seen that Li Hongyuan's shameless healing method was really very effective. However, in the end, would Jingwan appease him more, or would he appease Jingwan more? This was really hard to say. Jingwan's maid quickly put away the things and followed. Before the Imperial Guard commander left with the Imperial Guards, he naturally had to salute Li Hongyuan. With Jingwan's departure, the coldness on his body once again returned. He looked at the commander. Yu Zhongqing, you are a smart person. What should be said, what should not be said, you shouldn't need Ben Wang to teach you. You have meritorious service in killing the assassins today. Ben Wang will ask Fu Wang for meritorious service. This was originally our duty. We do not deserve any meritorious service. Meritorious service should be rewarded. Wrongdoings should be punished. This is heaven's law and earth's principle. Yu Zhongqing's breathing stopped, his heart a little bitter. He just followed the powerless Wang Ye out for a stroll. How could he let him see things that he shouldn't see? Even if it was the emperor, for the sake of the lives of these brothers that he brought out, he also couldn't say things that shouldn't be said. Isn't you Darren thinking too much? Ben Wang is talking about the Luo family's third Mississippi. Well, this was what he should care about. He didn't care what he shouldn't care about. Also, it couldn't be said that he shouldn't care. It should be that this kind of thing, no one would casually talk about it. They were the Imperial Guards, not gossipy women. Besides, that was Jin Qinhuang's private matter that couldn't be more private. Letting the Luo family's third miss be frightened. It is our dereliction of duty. Since that's the case, hurry up and catch up. Yes. From afar, he watched as Jingwan followed the original path and passed by the stream. It looked unusually simple and relaxed. However, Li Honyuan licked his lips. Did his little sweetheart know what he had done with his red lips that anyone with a discerning eye could tell? Li Honyuan looked at the grilled fish stuck in the ground. He casually picked one up, looked at it, took a bite, and tasted it. At this time, it hadn't turned cold yet, and the taste was actually not bad. In the eyes of the people around him, his daily food couldn't be more particular. However, at this moment, he chewed on the small fish, other than the head, along with the fish bones, and ate it completely. That posture was no different from his usual eating. Eunuch Mu lowered his eyes and thought, well, the master really likes Miss Luo. It's really deep in his bones. Muin, take the remaining 2 fish back. Yes. Mu Gonggong hurriedly responded. There was no convenient thing to hold, so he carefully held it in his hands. These were not 2 grilled fish, but the most delicious thing in the world. Bring the head and Ben Wang. As usual, send it to Ruan Fangfei. Li Honyuan said. The guards were stunned. Did Master mean that these 3 people were sent by Master's future concubine? Yes, judging from their last actions, they knew that they were obviously here for the future concubine. They all knew that the master of the Ruan family was fond of, so it was not strange that she sent people. However, although they had long known that there was a problem in the backyard of the Ruan family, today was the first time that they had a real confrontation. They were stronger than expected. Although they were all ordinary guards except for the leader, they should not be worse than the secret guards of other families. However, in a one-on-one situation, they were no match for the other party. However, wasn't it a bit arbitrary to conclude just because of this? In an instant, they threw this idea out. How could Master judge wrongly? Even if it was wrong, then whoever he said would be the one. Even if it wasn't Ruan Fangfei, it had to be her. Ordinary methods couldn't be used to plant people in the backyard of the Ruan family, so Master didn't continue to use other methods. As for more, it was not something they could know. What Master wanted to know, they could know. Even if they knew, they would rot in their stomachs. But they should never inquire about things they didn't know. However, this is usual? According to what? In the end, it was still an E who understood in an instant. The maid from the Dragon Boat Festival. Send people to the front. Li Honyuan understated his order. Hearing his words, sure enough, in Master's heart, only the Luo family's third miss was a treasure. If they dared to touch her, they would have to be prepared to bear the most tragic fate. However, Master only needed to say a word, but their subordinates had to run around until their legs broke. It would be best if they did it well, but if they didn't, then they were incompetent fools. However, it was really not that easy to do this matter now. Along the way, people were together. Not only were there the guards of each family, there were also the Imperial Guards. The security was extremely tight, and the possibility of being discovered was very high. But there was no other way. That woman's brain was sick. She had to provoke Master at this time, causing them to be implicated. This time, if they didn't properly teach her how to behave, it would be hard to make up for the pain of being oppressed by their master. Approaching, Jingwan used a brocade handkerchief to cover her mouth. She couldn't see it, but that didn't mean she couldn't feel it. There was a slight tingling sensation. It could be seen how ruthless a certain beast bite was. Jingwan suddenly stopped, turned around, and looked at Yu Zhongqing, a man who wasn't even 30 years old. His facial features were also very handsome. As the commander of the Imperial Guards, he was the head of the 3rd rank. Moreover, this man was said to be unmarried and was also one of the capital's golden bachelors. You, Darren, regarding matters involving my daughter, please do not speak about it later. Yu Zhongqing understood her meaning. Miss Luo, please rest assured. Many thanks. Jing Wan squatted. Miss is too serious. Jin Wang was famous for being fond of beauties. The beauties by his side changed again and again. They had all heard of his so-called great favor, but they had never seen the specifics. They all said that he was affectionate and fickle, never truly stopping for any woman. What they saw today, they were afraid that they hadn't seen it. At least, he was very attentive to his current fiancée. And Jingwan, through the previous matter, could be concluded that she wasn't delicate and weak, and her courage was also outstanding. The marks on Jingwan's body weren't obvious, but they weren't difficult to find. For example, old Madame Luo immediately noticed her condition. She was so shocked that she immediately got up and hurried forward. Wan, what happened? Jingwan timely showed a bit of panic. Grandmother, we encountered an assassin. What? Not only old Madame Luo, everyone present was shocked. Wan, what happened? Not waiting for Jingwan to answer, Lu Qingdi's furious voice came from the other side. Yu Zhongqing, where is Jin Wang? These people came back, but his son and his son's guards were gone. Replying to the emperor, the assassins have been executed. Wang Ye is fine. Wang Ye said that he would stay to check the situation and ordered this subordinate to escort Miss Luo back. Check the situation? Asking a Wang Ye to do it. What are you doing? Emperor, please forgive me. Wang Ye ordered this. This subordinate doesn't dare to disobey. Yu Zhongqing's words made Lu Qingdi speechless. Immediately send people back. Emperor, Wang Ye is back. Lu Qingdi's guard reminded. Sure enough, Jin Wang walked in unhurriedly with two people. That undisciplined virtue made Lu Qingdi so angry that he almost flipped the chessboard on the table. When Li Hongyuan walked in, evil creature, Ken just took some time to wash the blood off my body and came back a bit late. How did I offend Fu Huang? Li Hongyuan looked at Lu Qingdi as if he was looking at an unreasonable person. Lu Qingdi's veins on his forehead jumped. This evil creature, this evil creature. Lu Qingdi tried to calm his anger. After a while he asked, what happened? You ask Yu Zhongqing. Ken is going to change clothes. Just as he was about to leave, his eyes fell on Jingwan. Then he said to old Madame Luo, Old Madam, this is Ben Wang's fault. It's just that the assassins appeared so suddenly that Miss Luo might be a bit frightened. Before, she accidentally fell down. It seems that there is a little bruise on her face. Help her apply some medicine and boil a bowl of calming soup. Many thanks to Wang Ye. After that, Li Hongyuan left and Jingwan was taken away by old Madame Luo. Yu Zhongqing briefly described the process of the matter. Li Hongyuan didn't bring all of his people back. Then, this matter was probably being dealt with. Lu Qingdi thought for a moment and didn't send anyone else. Since it was an assassin, then the only place that could leave clues was on them. His evil creature's son wasn't stupid. Would he not search? Old Madame Luo saw Jingwan's lips. How could she not know? After being annoyed, she could only sigh helplessly and didn't say anything. Instead, she asked about the assassins in detail. In fact, Jingwan only participated in that thrilling short period of time. She really didn't know more than that. After thinking about it, Jingwan didn't say that she suspected that the assassins were targeting her. The only one who had a big grudge against her was probably Wan Fangfei. However, she was a young lady who lived in seclusion. How could she be so capable? If she could really do this, Jingwan would suspect her origin. Li Hongyuan didn't appear again after that. However, Lu Qingdi wasn't in the mood to continue playing chess, so he didn't leave. The remaining people, led by an E, finally came back. What did you find? Lu Qingdi asked bluntly with a sullen face. An E pretended to hesitate and then took out an object. It was a token less than 3 fingers wide. Seeing that thing, Lu Qingdi's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. It was something that belonged to the rebels. They were descendants of the royal family of the previous dynasty. Since the establishment of the Qi Yuan, he was already the 5th emperor. However, this group of people was like a group of strong rats. No matter how hard he tried, they wouldn't die. Every once in a while, they would jump out. What they liked to do most was to assassinate the royal family members. As long as they were related to the royal family, they would seize the opportunity to take a bite or two. However, this group of people hadn't appeared for many years. How could Lu Qingdi not be angry when they appeared again? However, this group of people was too cunning. No matter what he wanted to investigate now, he wouldn't get any results. Lu Qingdi left in a huff. Then, the Luo family finally quieted down. This matter was suppressed by Lu Qingdi, so as not to make people panic. When it was close to noon, everyone began to cook. For a while, the aroma filled the air. A scream broke the peace and tranquility. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/66536162. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken.com mobile version, reading URL, mbicken.com. Chapter 172. The voice came from the Ruan family. Something had indeed happened to the Ruan family. To be exact, something had happened to Ruan Fangfei. It was said that Miss Ruan was feeling unwell due to the extreme heat. She didn't sleep well last night and took a nap in the carriage. It was also said that she didn't like to have people by her side when she was sleeping. In her deep sleep, she felt something strange and thought that it was a servant girl who came to see her. She casually asked but didn't get any answer. Thus, she opened her eyes in displeasure, and then, what she saw was 3 hanging bloody heads. Her hair was disheveled, and her entire face was like that of her servant girl on the day of the Dragon Boat Festival. Other than the eyes, there wasn't a single place that was intact. Even the eyelids were cut off, and the eyeballs were protruding. Not to mention that she saw at the moment she opened her eyes in a small space, even if it was at other times. Even if someone described the specific situation and was mentally prepared, it was very likely that she would be frightened when she saw it again. On the day of the Dragon Boat Festival, Ruan Fangfei was looking for abuse. She ran to see the dead servant girl and was severely frightened. Later, she was injured and her face was injured. In the first few days, she even had a mental breakdown. When she finally got better, she was ruthlessly provoked by Li Hongyuan. Then, rumors flew everywhere. Unknowingly, it made the Ruan family have opinions about her. Naturally, she didn't have a good day. Ruan Fangfei broke down and screamed in the carriage. Because the heads were hanging low and close to her, there was clearly a certain distance between them. But she couldn't pass through and leave this extremely terrifying place. She shivered and curled up into a ball. That appearance was as pitiful as it could be. Her screams naturally attracted the people of the Ruan family. They hurriedly climbed into the carriage and opened the curtain. In the end, the servant girl also screamed and scrambled back. Then, she fell out of the carriage in an unusually sorry state. The people behind also vaguely saw the situation inside. Who still dared to go up? The other masters, led by Ruan Ruizong, quickly rushed over and heard Ruan Fangfei's mournful and desperate screams. What happened? Ruan Ruizong's face was as black as water. It seemed that since the Dragon Boat Festival, everything in the Ruan family was not going well, and the root of it all revolved around Ruan Fangfei. No matter how stable and calm he was, he felt mentally and physically exhausted, and it was difficult for him to smile. Master, human heads. In the carriage, there are 3 human heads hanging. Ruan Fangfei's mother, on the other hand, was the first to react. She rushed up and pulled open the curtains. Although she couldn't see the front of the heads, she was certain that they were human heads. Especially when they were dripping with blood. As for her daughter, she was tightly stuck to the innermost corner. At this moment, as a mother, her eyes turned red. Her face revealed a frightening viciousness. She took a deep breath and entered the carriage with a rather capable posture. With a wave of her hand, She pulled down the three heads and then reached out to hug Ruan Fangfei. Ruan Fangfei was shocked and scared. She punched and kicked. Madame Ruan comforted her while holding her up. However, when he stood up, his body paused for a moment, as if he had no strength to continue. She carried her daughter out unsteadily. Just as she stepped out of the door, her legs went soft and she almost fell. Ruan Ruizhong saw her face as pale as paper. Her body was clearly trembling, but she still held her daughter tightly. His eyes turned red and his heart ached. He hurried forward, wanting to personally carry her. However, he was already a pile of old bones. Not only did he not manage to catch her, his body tilted and he was directly pressed to the ground. Only then did the others react. They rushed forward in a flurry. It was unknown if it was because they were so scared that their hands and feet went soft. After a long time, not only did they not manage to get her up, they even made a mess. What a motherly love! This woman is really good at pretending. If I didn't know her true face, I'm afraid I would have been deceived by her. After watching the good show, he turned around and left. It wasn't easy for them to settle down properly. Ruan Fangfei was a bit deranged. She was knocked unconscious. Her mother also fainted from shock. As for Ruan Ruizhong, his waist was injured. This matter was naturally reported to Lu Chengdi as soon as possible. Lu Chengdi was still angry because of the assassination attempt on Li Hongyuan. Now that such a thing happened, how could he not be shocked? On one hand, he sent an imperial physician. On the other hand, he had Yu Zhongqing and the Minister of Justice go to the scene to investigate. Everything close to the carriage was all moved away. No one dared to take a step closer. It was clearly a sunny day, but the lonely carriage gave people a strange and gloomy feeling. Fortunately, the people who came were not ordinary. The curtains on the door and windows were hung up. The scene inside could be seen clearly. There were three heads scattered at the bottom of the carriage. Only one of them was facing upwards and could be seen clearly. At that moment, even people who were used to seeing corpses and limbs couldn't help but take a step back. They let out 2 turbid breaths before stepping forward. The Minister of Justice gestured to one of his subordinates. That person nodded and walked closer. However, he didn't rush up. Instead, he carefully looked around, including the edges of the carriage. Then, he stood by the window and looked inside carefully. He frowned slightly. Then, he got into the carriage and checked the 3 heads without changing his expression. During this process, the Minister of Justice remained silent. Yu Zhongqing also stood quietly by his side. When that person got down from the carriage, he said, "Sir, the person who did this did it very cleanly. Except for the inside of the carriage, there are no traces of blood. The 3 people, except for their eyes and ears, are unrecognizable. The openings are very neat. It can be seen that when they did this, they were very clean. In addition, their faces were scratched after they died. The blood should have been splashed later. It's not certain if it's human blood." After a pause, he continued, "If I'm not wrong, the person who scratched the faces should be the same person who killed the female corpse on the Dragon Boat Festival. Is this true? But didn't you say that the female corpse was scratched when she was alive? There should be a big difference. How do you know? Many people have their own little habits. The wounds are very similar." The murderer for the Dragon Boat Festival incident was not found at all. Of course, that incident happened in the capital and was not under his jurisdiction. Logically speaking, today's incident should not be under his jurisdiction either. However, in this convoy, he was the only one who was in charge of criminal cases. Because the murderer for the Dragon Boat Festival couldn't be found, naturally, no one knew the reason. Everyone guessed that the servant girl saw something shady. However, this speculation was still puzzling. If the murderer of the 2 cases was really the same person or the same group of people, then the previous guess might be overturned. After all, the common point of the 2 cases seemed to be the youngest daughter of the first wife of the Grand Secretary. But what was the reason? First, investigate the identities of these 3 people and see if they are from the convoy. Yes, the 3 heads on the carriage had been taken down. Yu Zhongqing glanced at them. However, he inadvertently saw a small red mole on the earlobe of one of the heads. His eyes couldn't help but shrink, because in the previous assassination, there was one person who had such a mole, the person whose head was cut off by Jin Qinhuang. Yu Zhongqing didn't believe that this was a coincidence. Moreover, the face was covered in blood, only the ears were clean. If he remembered correctly, the ears of the female corpse on the Dragon Boat Festival were all cut off. Yu Zhongqing's hair was somewhat numb. He always felt that this was simply left for him to see. Yu Zhongqing's hand that was holding the knife at his waist couldn't help but tighten. After investigating, he quickly discovered that the Ruan family was missing 3 guards. Yu Zhongqing's palm pressed against his forehead, his brows tightly knitted. If these 3 people were really from the Ruan family and really assassinated Jin Qinhuang, no, it should be the 3 assassins of the Luo family's 3rd young lady. And Jin Qinhuang secretly sent them back and specifically targeted the Ruan family's young lady. Didn't this mean that Jin Qinhuang knew the whole story from the beginning? The reason he did this, perhaps it could be seen as for the person he cared about. In fact, these could not be mentioned for the time being. The key point was that the guards of the Ruan family were actually stronger than the Imperial Guards and the Qinhuang's guards. This was a big problem. It should be known that the guards of the general officials were only relatively strong, ordinary people. In addition, Jin Qinhuang knew the identities of these 3 people, but planted it on the rebel thieves. From the beginning, he cut off everyone's idea of finding the assassins in the convoy. He knew that there was a problem with the Ruan family, but did not reveal it. Why was that? And the reason why Yu Zhongqing thought that it was framing and not suspecting that the rebel thieves were in the Ruan family was because he was also present when the 3 assassins were searched. He even personally did it. There was clearly nothing. Then, how could the people by Jin Qinhuang's side have the rebel thieves' token and carry it with them? One question after another. It was also one secret after another. The more you know, the faster you will die, or Yu Zhongqing thought of Jin Qinhuang, who was like a death god and had a splitting headache. He inadvertently knew some things, and then was forced to know more. Even if Jin Qinhuang wanted to win him over, wasn't his courage a bit too big? He didn't let him express his position at all, and let him know even more things. Was he really not afraid that he would report it to the emperor? The red mole on the earlobe was considered a good sign. These 3 people were identified as people of the Ruan family. As for where their corpses were, how did their heads end up on Ruan Fangfei's head? The first question was unsolvable. He sent people to the vicinity to search, but there was nothing. They also didn't see any place that resembled the crime scene. He just gave up like that. Who let them be just 3 servants? It was simply not worth the trouble. As for the second question, he asked a lot of people. There were 3 people who said that they were knocked unconscious and didn't see anything. The others didn't even see a ghost. Yu Zhongqing looked at the forest in the distance. He clearly said that there were 3 assassins. Why didn't anyone connect the 2? Why didn't anyone mention going there to take a look? In the end, it was only because they were 3 guards. Their lives were cheap. If they were replaced by 3 people of high status, he was afraid that they would have already gone to look for them. Yu Zhongqing spat out a mouthful of turbid air. In the end, he didn't say anything. He also cherished his life. He was also selfish. He didn't live for himself alone. It must be said that old Madame Ruan was pretending to faint. When her people told her the details of the matter, she clenched her fists, and her nails almost sunk into her flesh. Jin Qinhuang? Was it also him on the Dragon Boat Festival? Fang Fei had always been steady. How could she do such a thing this time? However, looking at her, in nearly a month's time, not only was her face disfigured, but she was also like a rat crossing the street. Being forced to do such a thing, there was no way to blame her. However, there were some things that she didn't dare to confirm. If the person hidden in the dark was really Jin Qinhuang, then this hidden enemy was much more terrifying than expected. She wasn't his opponent at all. Jingwan looked fine on the surface, but after all, it was the first time she saw such a scene. She couldn't completely recover in a short time. After drinking the calming soup, she took advantage of the fact that they weren't on the road and slept for a while in the carriage. Gong Mama and the wet nurse took turns fanning her. As for the several servant girls, Jingwan also let them drink the calming soup and sleep for a while. They slept well, but old Madame Luo ordered not to disturb her, so they missed lunch. However, it didn't matter. She didn't have an appetite. After waking up, she just casually made some simple cushions. A few of the servant girls woke up before her and looked to be in good spirits. In fact, they were mainly frightened by the terrifying aura on Li Hongyuan's body. When they saw the bloody scene, they immediately looked away. It didn't affect them much. After all, Li Hongyuan was a living person and didn't specifically target them. When his aura dissipated, it didn't leave them with a psychological shadow. At this moment, they quickly prepared food for Jingwan. Before going to bed, she applied some ointment on her lips. Originally, it was only a little red and swollen, but now it was basically invisible. When she ate it, she didn't feel strange. Jingwan ate half full and stopped eating. The people around her all knew that it was hard for her to get carsick. If she ate too much, she would feel even worse, so they didn't persuade her to eat more. Then, Jingwan noticed something wrong. Look at the sun. The time for staying has already passed. Why haven't you left yet? Something came up. We'll probably have to wait for another hour, Qing Zhu replied. What happened? It didn't seem strange that she encountered an assassination when she was just taking a walk. Something happened when she woke up after sleeping. Jingwan lowered her head and drank a mouthful of the soup to relieve the heat. She didn't wait for their answer. She raised her head and saw that they all wanted to say something, but stopped. She suddenly became curious. What's wrong? Does it have something to do with me? It has nothing to do with you. It's just that you were frightened earlier. Don't bother to listen to those dirty things. Nanny Gong came over and explained to Jingwan. Jingwan's heart skipped a beat. She was scared because she saw the bloody scene, and also because she witnessed the scene of Li Hongyuan cold-blooded killing. It was just a normal thing. How could it affect her? It was most likely that she saw blood again, or someone died directly. It was really quite unpeaceful along the way. Where is sister-in-law? Is she taking a nap? Since Nanny Gong didn't want her to know, she didn't ask, lest she felt disgusted. https://www.yanguiwaiwo.com/11/11807/66536163. HTML. Please click here to report. No registration required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.yanguiwaiwo.com. Bikugo mobile version, reading website, yanguiwaiwo.com. Chapter 173. Jingwan nodded. As long as her own people were well, it was fine. Other people, it was not her turn to care, nor did she want to care. Not long after, the servants started to pack up the things. The Luo family shed was built quickly, so it was naturally not a big problem to pack it up. Without much effort, everything was properly packed up. They could even take advantage of the time before departure to rest for a while. Sunny Jia impolitely boarded Jingwan's carriage. She saw that there was indeed no effect, so the carriages continued to move forward. Other than the two of them, there was also a servant girl left in the carriage. Did sister-in-law sleep well? Very well. Sun Ijia nodded and picked up a sour plum from the small table and put it in her mouth. Because the window curtain was not down, Jingwan suddenly saw a carriage that was abandoned after the horse was untied. It was a good carriage and looked ordinary. It definitely did not belong to any Wang Ye or Wang Fei. However, there were other family members in the Wangfu. Naturally, the carriage was not of that high standard. And, in front of the Luo family, it was not only members of the imperial family. Jingwan's heart moved. If everything was fine, this carriage naturally would not be abandoned like this. It seemed that it was related to the previous incident. Whose carriage is this? It should be the Grand Secretary's. Sun Yijia glanced at it and withdrew her gaze with lack of interest. However, there was a bit of schadenfreude in her tone. The one who had an accident was Ruan Fangfei, so she was naturally happy. I heard that when Ruan Fangfei was resting, a very scary and dirty thing appeared on the carriage. She was very frightened and even went a bit crazy. Jingwan was rather speechless. Ruan Fangfei was her enemy, but she did not feel anything. This sister-in-law was actually happy. It's good that she went crazy. It's best if she went completely crazy. Then she doesn't need to enter Jin Wangfu to avoid annoying people. Sister-in-law. Jingwan was helpless. How could she still remember this? All right, I won't say anymore. She, Ruan Fangfei, has been plagued with bad luck recently. If I say too much, it will be bad luck. Jingwan didn't know whether Ruan Fangfei was unlucky or not. She only knew that Ruan Fangfei was indeed unlucky, and it was bloody unlucky. Even if it wasn't something that could scare people into madness, it was obviously messing with her. Jingwan originally wanted to take revenge, but looking at it now, it was as if someone was taking revenge for her. Moreover, it was done step by step, little by little. It felt like they could kill Ruan Fangfei with one stab, but in fact, they were using a blunt knife to cut her flesh. They would not stop until she was tortured and in heart-wrenching pain. She didn't know if it was to avenge her, but it was a fact that someone was targeting Ruan Fangfei. Then, who was this person? Was it the Jin Qinhuang, Li Hongyuan, who had humiliated Ruan Fangfei in the beginning at the Gongqin Wangfu? There were many things that seemed right, but were actually wrong. However, when you really thought about it carefully, you would find that it couldn't withstand the scrutiny at all. There were many loopholes that couldn't be connected at all. Then, these clues seemed to have been deliberately left behind by someone, and it felt like they could be erased. Perhaps it was because of the Ruan family's matter that Lu Chengdi's mood wasn't very good. Of course, most people didn't know that Jin Qinhuang had been assassinated by a rebel thief. After that, unless it was necessary, they didn't stop. Fortunately, for 2 consecutive days, nothing happened. At this speed, they would arrive at Chengde's summer palace in another day. However, on the evening of the first day, they passed by a river. However, the bad luck was that the bridge was broken. The depression in Lu Chengdi's heart hadn't dissipated, and now that they encountered another unlucky incident, he couldn't help but feel angry. It should be known that in front of the ceremonial guards, there were people who cleared the road first. Along the way, unrelated people were cleared early on and prohibited from passing. Previously, they didn't receive the news that the bridge was broken. Now, wouldn't it make them furious? Unfortunately, no matter how angry they were, the bridge was broken, and there was no way around it. It couldn't be repaired in a short period of time. They couldn't go back to the capital, so they could only choose to take a detour. The result of their exploration was that there was a rope bridge 1 li upstream. Obviously, it couldn't be used. Further up, they didn't find it for the time being. 2 li downstream, there was still a rope bridge. Finally, they found another bridge 7 or 8 li downstream, which could barely allow the carriage to pass. Thus, the caravan turned back. Because they couldn't walk along the riverbank, they could only turn back 1 li and go downstream. However, it was a road that could barely allow the carriage to pass. Along the way, it still needed to be leveled, so the speed was naturally slow. In short, it could be summed up with one word: annoying. You say, almost every year, they had to avoid the summer heat. Every year, they had to walk that road. Naturally, they had to maintain it every year, but the result, the road, became more and more uneven. Jingwan sat in a carriage and really suffered. Unfortunately, because Luo Jingbua had to take care of his wife, and because the sun was high up in the sky, other than the horse pulling the carriage, he didn't prepare any more horses. Even if she wanted to get down to ride, she couldn't. It was also at this time that an E led a horse over. His intention was self-evident. Jingwan was slightly silent. To be honest, when Jin Qinhuang was considerate, it really made people unable to resist and hard to refuse. However, Jingwan's gaze stayed on an E for a moment. "You're Jin Qinhuang's bodyguard captain?" replying to Miss Luo, yes. He didn't know Jingwan's intention, but he still obediently answered. Jingwan didn't want to continue to suffer in the carriage, so she accepted Li Hongyuan's kindness. Thank Wanya for me. Miss Luo is too polite. And Yi left the horse behind and left. Jingwan got down from the carriage. She naturally knew how to ride a horse, but she wasn't very proficient. If it was flat, she could run, but if it wasn't flat and there were some small hills, she could only ride. Compared to Jin Qinhuang's horse skills at the Great War Princess Fu, the difference was more than 108,000 li. Fortunately, the current journey was slow. To ride a horse, to keep up, was just a small matter. Then, Jingwan put on a gauze hat, stepped on the saddle, and mounted the horse. When she sat down, Jingwan found something unusual. The cushion of the saddle felt the same as the couch in the carriage, soft and slightly cold. Looking at the shape of the saddle, she knew that it was definitely prepared a long time ago and wasn't a temporary idea. Moreover, this horse was a BMW, but it seemed very docile. It didn't kick its hooves just because the person on its back was a stranger. Most likely, it was prepared before leaving the capital. Perhaps it was specially prepared for her and was needed in an emergency. Jingwan didn't want to be narcissistic, but it was proven more than once that Jin Qinhuang really did it for her. This fake, could be so attentive. Then what about the original one? To what extent did Jin Qinhuang treat her well? However, under normal circumstances, when dealing with a substitute, other than forcibly seizing, shouldn't there be a standard for every word and action of the original? Especially for this kind of overbearing and unreasonable person like Jin Qinhuang. However, the truth was not like this. He never asked her for anything, but everything was according to her own preferences. She couldn't understand it. Jingwan felt that she was still deeply influenced by Jin Qinhuang. Otherwise, why would she think about it every time he did something? He clearly told her every time. If she couldn't figure it out, then she shouldn't think about it. Riding the horse, neither fast nor slow, neither fast nor slow. Without the uncomfortable feeling of dizziness and panic, Jingwan felt quite leisurely. However, it seemed that they wouldn't be able to cross the river before dark. Was this the rhythm of having to sleep in the wild again? Speaking of this summer palace, they had to go there every year. Only the road was repaired, but there was no relay station along the way. According to reason, it should be calculated at the right time to set up a relay station for resting and lodging. Moreover, because it was a place where the emperor needed to use, it should be very luxurious. As a result, along the way, there wasn't even a normal relay station. Jingwan asked out of curiosity, and the result made people speechless. Chengde Summer Palace was built during the reign of Emperor Taizu of Qi Yuan. It was not the palace site left by the previous dynasty that was remodeled. Except for the more than 30 li that overlapped with the official road, there was no relay station until the palace. According to Emperor Taizu, his descendants should know the hardships and appreciate the beauty of the mountains and rivers. There were few opportunities to go out on weekdays. Therefore, the journey to the summer palace was a rare opportunity that must be grasped. Therefore, Emperor Taizu called for his descendants to eat and sleep in the wild. After hearing this, Jingwan wanted to ask Emperor Taizu, "Did you have a stroke in your brain?" As the emperor, the master of the world, it was really eating and sleeping in the wild. It would only be more tiring. Just imagine, in order to let the emperor eat and sleep well without a relay station, how many things would have to accompany the journey? How cumbersome would it be? It would be more reliable if you ordered that the relay station be built like a summer palace. Sure enough, as Jingwan expected, there was still some distance to the bridge. The sky was getting darker and darker. If they didn't find a place to sleep for the night, they would probably have to move in the dark. Lu Chengdi had to order to find a place with a dark face. Soon, there was a village built near the river not far ahead. Lu Chengdi lowered his status. It was a big village with more than 100 households and a population of nearly 1,000. Because it was not particularly far from the capital, some people had been to the capital. However, not everyone had the opportunity to see the emperor. Therefore, when they heard that the emperor was coming, The whole village was frightened and excited. They had long known that the emperor would go to the summer palace in a few days. Some people even wanted to sneak a peek. Of course, they could only see the majesty of the emperor from a distance. They absolutely couldn't see the emperor clearly. After all, the clattering of the iron hooves of the guards was frightening. Jingwan didn't know that it was unusual for such a big village to be a few miles away from the summer palace. However, it seemed that it had existed for a long time and had been well behaved. Moreover, the imperial guards had carefully checked it and found that there was no problem. For something like an assassination, it should be considered very lucky to encounter it once, right? Therefore, they settled down in the village. Every family wanted to make room for these nobles, especially Li Zheng, who wanted to invite Lu Qingdi to stay at his home. Unfortunately, Lu Qingdi said that he didn't want to disturb the villagers, so he politely declined. As for whether he really didn't disturb the people or disliked it, they didn't cook their own food, but borrowed the kitchens of the families. Jingwan had already returned to the carriage. Sun Yijia also returned to her and Luo Jinghua's carriage after the hottest period. Looking outside through the gap of the window curtain, both adults and children poked their heads out to look inside with curiosity and excitement. However, not only the imperial guards, but the guards of the families also stuck to their duties. The young ladies and madams didn't show their faces, but the servant girls were busy going in and out. One must know that they were all servants. In the eyes of these people, they were unattainable. The peasant women were inevitably envious and jealous. Some men even couldn't help but reveal a lustful look. These beautiful and tender young ladies, perhaps they would never see them again in their lives. Jingwan frowned and put down the curtain. No matter what, she inexplicably didn't like this place. It wasn't that she had any opinions about these people who were at the bottom. In her opinion, if she couldn't change the social structure, then it was better to completely isolate them. No matter where it was, in fact, there was a phenomenon of hatred for the rich. If one didn't come into contact with it, perhaps it would be better. Once one came into contact with it, there would be an obvious difference in feeling, and the gap in one's heart would grow. This could become the root of crime. When Jingwan heard that there were some young masters who seemed to be curious and brought people to wander around the village, her frown deepened. This wasn't a small village. There should be a lot of unmarried young ladies, and there must be some outstanding ones. Who knew if they would disturb the spring water because of them? In her previous life, there were a lot of melodramatic encounters in ancient dramas. However, if it wasn't a trap set by someone, even if it wasn't, the innocent young ladies who entered a noble house because of their appearance wouldn't have a good ending in the end. Jingwan sent someone to tell Luo Jinghua to stay in the carriage obediently to accompany his wife. Originally, Luo Jinghua and his wife wanted to go down the carriage for a walk. However, when they heard Jingwan's words, they dismissed the idea. When they lifted the curtain and looked outside, they seemed to understand Jingwan's intention. Jingwan casually ate some food in the carriage. Originally, she didn't prepare much, and there wasn't much left. However, even so, if those farmers saw it, they might be drooling. Jingwan basically didn't use the serving chopsticks when eating. Therefore, she basically wouldn't give the leftovers to the maids. Now, it was even more impossible to give it to outsiders. Wash the dishes yourself. In addition, send some snacks, dried fruits, and other things to the master. Also, leave some money for him. After Jingwan gave the order, she didn't say anything else. It might be more convenient to take a bath when sleeping in the wild. However, here, Jingwan felt uncomfortable. Therefore, she decided to endure it for the night and just casually wash up. No matter how much time was wasted, she would definitely arrive at the temporary imperial residence before tomorrow night. At that time, she would have a good bath. As night fell, the village gradually quieted down. Only the occasional dog barking could be heard from afar. Jingwan didn't sleep very well in the carriage. In the middle of the night, Jingwan suddenly woke up. It should be known that this situation was very rare for her. Jingwan faintly heard the noise. Was it almost dawn? "Mama, what time is it?" Mama Gong was right beside her. She reached out and patted her. "It's still early. Do you want to drink some water?" "Yes." Then a small lamp was lit. The light wasn't strong, but it was just enough for her to see clearly. Without Mama Gong's order, the maid quickly brought in the water. After all, their carriage was right next to them. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6653165. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken.com Mobile Edition. Chapter 174. Jingwan drank the water and listened carefully. She felt something was wrong. "Did something happen?" "Miss, do you want me to go and have a look?" Nanny Gong said. Jingwan shook her head. "No need. If something really happened, we'll know in the morning. Something that happened in the middle of the night was definitely not a good thing. It might be some shady business. No matter what the purpose was, whether or not he could find out was one thing, but he was afraid that he would get himself into trouble if he didn't do it well. Nanny, go and rest. You don't have to stay here to watch over me. We're outside, not at home. Miss, sleep well." "I'm fine." Although Nanny Gong spoke softly to her, Jingwan knew her insistence. They had been together day and night for more than 2 years. It was enough for them to know each other's temperament. When Nanny Gong was stubborn, Jingwan could not do anything to her. So, she had better go to sleep. Jingwan yawned and lay back down. She was not very awake. After Nanny Gong turned off the light, she fell asleep quickly. After that, she slept well. Nanny Gong gently fanned Jingwan to make sure that there was a cool breeze, but it was not too fast to disturb her. In the darkness, although she could not see clearly, Nanny Gong still looked at Jingwan. "Good girl, after tonight, those demons and monsters related to the prince will be cleaned up. He said that he will treat you well for the rest of his life. Believe him. Although he often does not abide by the rules, does whatever he wants, and is overbearing and bad-tempered, he always keeps his word. You will live a good life. You don't have to rely on the third young master and third young mistress. Good girl, you will live a good life." At this moment, Emperor Lu Qingdi was sitting upright in the Li Zheng's house. Although he was not wearing the imperial throne of the imperial court and was only wearing casual clothes, he still exuded an extraordinary aura, especially the cold air that was emitted from his body, which made people shiver even though it was June. There were quite a number of people present. The nobles and ministers were better off, but the commoners were kneeling on the ground, shivering. Not only the common people were kneeling on the ground, but there were also 2 people of high status kneeling in front of Lu Qingdi. "Why did Imperial Father summon me here in the middle of the night?" Li Hongyuan walked in casually from the outside. His voice was a little hoarse because he hadn't woken up yet. At the same time, his displeasure could be felt from his body. Thinking about it, it was reasonable that he was woken up from a good sleep. If it wasn't his father who invited him, he would probably be very angry. Lu Qingdi raised his head and glanced at his sick son. His hair was hanging loosely behind his head, and his coat was casually draped over his shoulders. Under the dim light of the fire, Lu Qingdi looked much more docile and harmless than usual, which was full of anger and anger. As his father, Lu Qingdi had never seen him like this. "Your clothes are disheveled, what a scandal." Li Hongyuan frowned, feeling that his anger was rising again. In fact, he had never slept well. When he slept, the environment was very quiet, and any noise would disturb him. When he woke up, he was very grumpy. These days on the road, he naturally didn't sleep well. At this time, even his father wouldn't be able to get a good look from him. He rubbed his eyebrows and suppressed his anger. "Imperial Father, what's the matter? If there's something, say it quickly. This prince still needs to sleep." He glanced at the people kneeling on the ground. Why aren't you sleeping? Are you singing a drama? In his previous life, after he ascended the throne, especially after the country was stable, even if the sky fell and the earth cracked, it would have to wait until he woke up. In this life, the only thing that could disturb his sleep without arousing his anger was probably Jingwan's matter. Being woken up in the middle of the night, no one would be happy. Knowing his temperament, Lu Chengdi didn't argue with him at this time. Yuan sit down first. Noble consort Su said in a soft voice. Li Honyuan glanced in the direction of the voice. Imperial Mother, why are you here? Imperial Mother and your Imperial Father don't want to be tormented at this time, but alas. Noble consort Su sighed helplessly. Eunuch Mu and the others brought a chair for him and placed it next to Noble consort Su. Li Honyuan seemed to hesitate for a moment, then slowly walked over with a sullen expression. After sitting down, he directly reached out and pressed his hand to his forehead. He leaned against the chair in an undignified manner, and then closed his eyes. From where Imperial concubine Su was sitting, she could clearly see his slightly furrowed brows. There was a hint of forbearance and sullenness mixed in. He seemed to be quite uncomfortable. Noble consort Su felt sorry for her son. Her son usually slept until he woke up naturally. Waking up in the middle of the night, he must be suffering. Therefore, her anger towards the culprit rose even more. Lord Ruan, how long is your good daughter going to make us wait? Even though Ruan Ruizhong's back was hunched, he seemed to have aged 10 years in an instant. He looked dispirited. Although he had only twisted his waist before, he probably wasn't very nimble now. So Noble consort Su's anger didn't subside. Noble consort. Ruan Ruizhong's lips moved, but he couldn't say the rest of the words. Li Honyuan opened his eyes and glanced at him. This old man was already so depressed now. When he knew everything, even if he didn't vomit blood and die, he would most likely have a stroke and collapse in bed. Wouldn't the plan of squeezing him for a few more years be ruined? Li Honyuan looked away with disinterest. In the entire Qiyuan, there were tens of millions of people. Couldn't they find a person who could replace him, Ruan Ruizhong? If it was useless, then it was useless. Is Ruan Fangfei causing trouble again? Tell me what's going on first. That little b** TCH has the gall of a bear's heart and leopard's guts. As your future imperial consort, she actually hooked up with someone else. Noble consort Su gnashed her teeth and said hatefully. Ruan Ruizhong's vision turned black, but he couldn't defend himself and could only gasp for breath. Li Honyuan paused and then straightened his body, slightly surprised. This is her way of making Ben Wang regret? He sneered. She's really going all out. Looking at the two men kneeling in front of Lu Chengdi. No, one of them could only be said to be a teenager. Then, who is this man, Uncle Zhong, or 11th brother, or both of them? Jin Qinhuang. Ruan Ruizhong trembled all over, looking like he couldn't wait to strangle Li Honyuan to death. That's why, once Li Hongyuan's mouth became poisonous, even a saint could stomp his feet. Li Honyuan sneered. She has the guts to do it. Why would she be afraid of others talking about it? Sixth brother. It has nothing to do with me. It's Uncle Zhong, not me. It has nothing to do with me. 11th Prince hurriedly distanced himself. He didn't want to be remembered by the terrifying sixth brother. He also made a move on his several imperial brothers who held great power, without any leniency. He himself, this pitiful worm, without power and influence, certainly wouldn't be enough to play with him for a round. Speaking of which, 11th Prince was also depressed. He was just used to seeing all kinds of beauties around him. Suddenly coming to this kind of place, he met a good-looking and enthusiastic girl and wanted to taste a beauty with a different flavor. To put it bluntly, he was used to eating exotic delicacies and suddenly wanted to taste plain porridge and side dishes, just as Jingwan expected when she first entered the village. This girl happened to be from Li Zheng's family. Moreover, speaking of which, he was the one who was seduced. Perhaps she really was blinded by riches and honor and wanted to achieve good things early. That girl was hungry and couldn't be choosy, and chose someone who seemed to be easy to hook up with and had a noble status. And a certain prince really willingly took the bait, so there was an appointment at night. Unfortunately, this pair of wild mandarin ducks was just about to fiercely grind each other when they heard movement and bumped into another pair of wild mandarin ducks who were working hard to fight. That feeling was really, previously, when Lu Qingdi didn't say anything, 11th Prince knelt quietly. At this moment, he probably really wanted to prove his innocence to his sixth brother. So he spilled the beans and explained the cause and effect of his experience clearly, without omitting anything. Therefore, in the eyes of these unfavored princes, Li Hongyuan's despotic power was more terrifying than Lu Qingdi's power. 11th Prince was not yet 14, but since he first had sex, there were signs that he couldn't stop. However, because he was still in the palace and wasn't old enough to marry, he could only fool around with the palace maids around him. Then he secretly looked at the other palace maids in the palace, even his father's concubines, and swallowed his saliva. It was no wonder that he was so easily tempted by her. After he finished speaking, Lu Qingdi lifted his leg and kicked him. What a good-for-nothing. 11th Prince staggered, but Lu Qingdi didn't use too much force, so he knelt down obediently. However, he carefully moved a little further away. In Lu Qingdi's mind, 6th Prince was also beautiful, but he knew restraint. He was not the kind of licentious person who disregarded his health and dared to play without restraint. His hair was not even fully grown, but he dared to play without restraint. Was he not afraid of hurting his health? After all, he was his son. He had to ask the imperial physician to check his pulse after the matter. However, even if his son took the initiative to do something wrong, it was because he was led astray by others. Moreover, this time, he was obviously seduced by others. So, this was all the fault of the other party. Li Zheng, you have raised a good daughter. Li Zheng knelt on the ground, trembling more and more. His daughter was usually proud and arrogant, but who knew that she would do such a ridiculous thing? Your Majesty. He trembled, but couldn't say more. The girl wasn't any better. She didn't have the bold enthusiasm of seducing others. Your Majesty, in my opinion, since 11th Prince likes this girl a little, why don't we take her away? There's nothing bad about being a maid. After all, if we punish a girl when we pass by this village, it's equivalent to disturbing the peace here. It's also bad for your Majesty's reputation. What do you think? Imperial concubine Su suggested. Imperial concubine Su knew the temperament of people like 11th Prince too well. He purely wanted to taste something new. If he didn't eat it, he probably couldn't forget it. After the novelty passed, he would think about tonight and look at the wildflower picked by the roadside. He would only think about how embarrassing it was. It would be strange if this wildflower could have a good life. The way to punish people really didn't have to be so simple and crude. It could be more tactful and wouldn't ruin the reputation. Lu Qingdi pondered for a moment. As my beloved concubine says, "Thank you, Imperial Father. Thank you, Imperial concubine." 11th Prince hurriedly kowtowed. Li Zheng and his daughter didn't know the rules, but he could not understand. That's enough. Scram to the side. Thus, this pair of wild mandarin ducks was let off lightly. However, the other pair wasn't so simple. Old Madame Ruan came late with Ruan Fangfei supported. Behind them was Imperial concubine Su's aunt. It was obvious that she had just washed up and dressed. Ruan Fangfei was originally dispirited and listless because of the shock from the 3 heads. It could even be said that she had been muddle-headed. Now, even if she had seriously washed up, she had lost all her luster. There was a state where even if it was withered, you could still feel its vitality. There was also a state where no matter how beautiful it was, you could only feel the decay emitting from it. There was no doubt that Ruan Fangfei was in the second state. She was rotten from the inside, like a walking corpse, moving slowly. When the aunt behind her pushed her to kneel down, she was still in a trance. As for her mother, she didn't seem to be in a good state either. When Ruan Rue saw his wife and daughter like this, he was extremely distressed. He almost burst into tears. Trembling, he got up and knelt beside the mother and daughter. "Emperor, I'm afraid there are other secrets in this matter. Emperor, please investigate thoroughly. His daughter was caught having sex with someone. This had already become an indelible fact. Now that things had reached this point, it was better to completely break up and get rid of it. His daughter was either forced or framed. It was better than shamelessly gaining a reputation for being lascivious. Seeing the officials who had always been loyal to him like this, Lu Chengdi's heart softened. He sighed softly. In that case, let the two of them explain the ins and outs of the matter clearly. Royal brother, tell me first what exactly is going on. The one who was the most aggrieved right now was probably Prince Zhong. He still didn't know how this happened. He inexplicably became an adulterer. He was only slightly awakened when he was caught, and when he found out about the situation he was facing, he was almost scared to death. Imperial brother. Prince Zhong's lips wriggled. This matter, he didn't know how to say it. He was afraid that no one would believe him. However, he had to say it. Because it was too hot and I couldn't sleep, I kept tossing and turning on the bed. So, this younger brother simply got up and walked around blindly. Because the Imperial Army was patrolling at night, this younger brother didn't bring any guards. Unknowingly, I walked a little further away. When I heard some noise, I was a little scared and was about to turn back. Who knew that I suddenly smelled a strange fragrance? After that, I didn't know what happened. Then, my nephew and the others appeared and attracted the Imperial Army. Prince Zhong looked vexed. This meant that he was definitely not the one who was scheming. It just happened that he was the one who was being schemed against. Lu Chengdi's brows were tightly knitted. Prince Zhong suddenly became anxious. Imperial brother, believe me. Everything I said is absolutely true. Although this Miss Ruan hasn't married into the family, she is still sixth nephew's woman in name. Even if I ate a bear's heart and a leopard's gall, I wouldn't dare to touch his woman. Believe me, I'm really innocent. He almost cried. Okay, shut up. Lu Chengdi said irritably. Noble consort Su looked at Prince Zhong with an even worse expression. At that time, Sunny Jia was Yuan Er's prospective Wangfei. His son dared to have evil thoughts. Now, she was just a prospective secondary consort. Father and son were of the same origin. What did he not dare to do? Lu Chengdi's eyes fell on Ruan Fangfei, who kept her head down. Ruan, what do you have to say? Fangfei, what grievances do you have? Tell His Majesty. His Majesty will definitely make a decision for you. Fangfei, say something, Fangfei. Madame Ruan shook Ruan Fangfei and cried uncontrollably. After a long time, Ruan Fangfei slowly turned her head to look at her mother in a daze. Say what? There's nothing to say. Fangfei, Madame Ruan hugged her. Good daughter, don't be like this. Although Ruan Fangfei looked like this on the surface, in fact, her heart was unprecedentedly sober, very sober, including when she was scared to the point that she lost her mind. After this incident, she recovered without any medicine. Perhaps it was similar to the saying that when things reach an extreme, they will move in the opposite direction. In the middle of the night, her cousin from her maternal family came to find her. Because the people who served her, including her mother, all knew him and knew that they were close, they didn't stop him and couldn't stop him. He told her that he had been following the carriage. He said that he missed her so much that he almost went crazy. He had a lot to say to her. He was pulled down from the carriage and ordered the servants not to follow. He was a hooligan and his martial arts were very good. However, Ruan Fangfei didn't care and still trusted him. Not only did he know too many of her secrets and helped her do a lot of things that she couldn't do in person, but she knew that her condition wasn't very good. When it was quiet around her, the three heads appeared in front of her eyes. She needed to do something to distract herself. She knew the current situation. If she was discovered by others, her end would be very miserable. However, whether it was the fragrance on her cousin's body or his strong arms, it made her feel at ease. Therefore, everything went according to his wishes. Even though there were many torches outside the carriages, he still brought her out. The haystack field next to the village, facing the carriages, was faintly visible under the light of the torches. However, once they entered, they basically couldn't see it. What happened next would be her nightmare for the rest of her life. However, Ruan Fangfei couldn't say anything. Although she didn't know the details of her mother's background, she knew that she had secrets, including her maternal family. Her cousin and her mother might be of the same origin. Her maternal family hadn't come to the capital for so many years, and those who came were secretly doing things. She didn't sacrifice herself for her mother, but rather, if her mother's matter was exposed, it was very likely that it would implicate the whole family. Perhaps the whole family would be executed. She didn't want to throw her life away. Moreover, although her mother cared about her, if it involved the matters behind her, it was very likely that her mother wouldn't let her say a word that could threaten her. Her mother might even kill her first. "Mother, let me die. I don't want to live anymore. Let me die." Ruan Fangfei's tears streamed down. Taking advantage of her mother's inattention, she suddenly slapped her hand away, got up abruptly, and rushed towards a tree in the courtyard. That tree wasn't big, but it wasn't small either. It was just that no one would stand under that tree for no reason, so Ruan Fangfei bumped into it head-on. Then, her body fell limply to the ground. Ruan Ruizhong and his wife were stunned at first, but then they reacted. Fangfei. That mournful voice seemed to indicate that she was already a dead person. Fortunately, although there were a lot of people in this village, it was still big enough. The neighbors lived relatively far away from each other. Otherwise, this voice would have alarmed the entire village. However, even so, the few families nearby would have heard it. The husband and wife rolled and crawled over. They hugged the unconscious Ruan Fangfei and cried miserably. Lu Qingdi rubbed his suddenly swollen temples. "Call the imperial physician." Because of Ruan Fangfei's strange fate of not being able to be the main wife of the imperial family, Lu Qingdi didn't care at first, but he couldn't bear imperial consort Su's displeasure. With such a fate, there must be something wrong with this person. She was a good mother who doted on her son. She was worried that something wrong would harm her son, so she would whisper a few words in Lu Qingdi's ear from time to time. Even if it wasn't intentional, after a long time, Lu Qingdi's impression of Ruan Fangfei would also worsen. With this bad impression, good things would make him suspicious, and bad things would make him more evil. Ruan Fangfei's suicide attempt didn't make Lu Qingdi pity her at all. If she really died, he probably wouldn't even frown. Imperial Consort Su's face was even gloomier. She had seen this kind of little trick many times. There was clearly something wrong with this matter, but she refused to say it. She desperately wanted to avoid this matter. Wouldn't it make people suspect that she was a fickle woman who schemed against men? Where did she put her son? Where did she put the imperial family's face? If it wasn't the emperor who spoke, she would never allow the imperial physician to be called. "Little slut, it's best if you die. You're so disgusting." Li Hongyuan looked on coldly from the sidelines. He could clearly see that Ruan Fangfei had bumped into the tree trunk fiercely. In the end, when she was about to hit the tree trunk, she deliberately shifted her position. He was sure that Ruan Fangfei wouldn't die. He only gave the order and didn't know the specific situation. However, it didn't matter. In any case, he had already distanced himself from this matter. Moreover, it was good that she was so tenacious. He wanted to see how long she could last. Then, his gaze shifted to the woman who was hugging her. Now, this woman was already suspicious. However, it was because of this that she was even more afraid of taking action. After all, once her identity was exposed, she would definitely die without a burial place. As for Li Hongyuan himself, because he didn't want to expose his power for the time being, he didn't kill her ruthlessly. However, even if he was really exposed, Li Hongyuan wasn't afraid. It was just that it would be troublesome to clean up the mess later. He might even implicate the bowls. The only one who could make him worry would always be Jingwan. Moreover, this woman at most managed the Ruan family's backyard like an iron bucket. She didn't extend her hands too far. Ruan Ruizhong wasn't someone to be trifled with. If she really touched his forbidden area, he would immediately wake up. Without Ruan Ruizong, this big tree, this woman would come to an end. As for those people in the capital, their movements were all under his control. Therefore, in truth, even if there were some small loopholes, he was too lazy to fix them. These loopholes would be ignored or torn apart. The process would be complicated or simple, but the final result wouldn't change. Li Honyuan slowly stood up. Imperial father, imperial mother, this son will take his leave first. His voice wasn't loud, but everyone present heard it. Lu Qingdi looked at him. How are you going to deal with this matter? Li Honyuan glanced at his father. Imperial father's words are strange. Naturally, I'll deal with it as it should be. Don't tell me this woman, who has slept with countless men, still needs this son to carry her back to the residence? The corner of Lu Qingdi's mouth twitched. Don't talk nonsense with this old man. If it's that simple, why would I call you here? Li Honyuan smiled sarcastically. This son's face has already been ruined 8 or 10 times. At most, the scope of my curse has expanded, and even my concubines have been cursed. The Grand Secretary is your trusted aide, so this son still has to give him face. Ruan Fangfei has nothing to do with this son anymore. As for the rest, Imperial Father can deal with it as it should be. Yuan don't talk nonsense. This time, it has nothing to do with you at all. Imperial concubine Su's gaze was like a knife stabbing at Ruan Fangfei. Especially when she saw that she was showing signs of waking up with a groan. She couldn't wait to go up and strangle her to death. It's also because of your good nature that you didn't bicker with her. Otherwise, even if she was drowned in the river, she deserved it. Ruan Fangfei had indeed woken up. She had a terrible headache, felt dizzy and heavy, and felt nauseous. Although she wanted to avoid a direct death, in order to make it look real, she naturally couldn't hit her too lightly. Ruan Fangfei grabbed her mother's arm tightly and forced herself to open her eyes. Her vision was blurry, but she stared at Li Honyuan. Li Honyuan, if it wasn't for you, impudent. Is Yuan Er's name something you can call out directly? What, you still want to blame Yuan Er for today's matter? Don't think that just because your father is the Grand Secretary of the Cabinet, you can take yourself seriously. I gave you face, but you don't want it. Imperial concubine Su angrily scolded. Ruan Ruizong was also angry, but he could only tell Ruan Fangfei to shut up and then apologize to Imperial concubine Su. Imperial concubine, please don't be angry. My daughter didn't mean it that way. Imperial concubine Su sneered. I don't care what she means. It's fortunate that such a fickle woman didn't enter the family. Otherwise, wouldn't she have directly made my son wear a green hat today? As the saying goes, cultivate one's body, govern the country, and bring peace to the world. There's nothing to say about Lord Ruan being an official. However, it's better to put some effort into the family. Everyone says that you married a good wife, a virtuous wife, and a loving mother. But in the end, you raised your daughter to be like this. As a daughter, she usually looks good in all aspects, but deep down, she's a lowly person. As a mother, she's dignified and virtuous. Perhaps she's the same kind of person deep down. Imperial concubine. Ruan Ruizhong's tone became harsher. Imperial concubine, please don't slander others. There must be a hidden story about my daughter's matter. Hidden story? Of course, there is. The hidden story is that she's naturally dissolute and seduced men in her boudoir. Imperial concubine. Could it not be? If she didn't run out on her own, would she be at the haystack? Don't say that she was schemed against and was taken away by others. How many servants in your Ruan family say that they're vegetarians? Even if she was schemed against with so many people, why was it only her who got into trouble every time? In the end, isn't it because there's something wrong with her? Ruan Fangfei refused to defend herself, and Ruan Ruizong was rendered speechless by Imperial concubine Su. Lu Qingdi coughed lightly. Beloved concubine, that's enough. Lu Qingdi was simply giving advice after Imperial concubine Su had finished speaking. It was so stifling that it made one's heart, liver, and lungs hurt. Zhongqing, go to the Ruan family and ask if it's the same as before. Replying to your majesty, This subject has made the decision without authorization. I've already asked. There's nothing unusual with the Ruan family. Yu Zhongqing, who was guarding the courtyard door like a guardian, immediately responded. Well, previously, Ruan Fangfei was frightened and 3 people were drugged. However, since then, there was no one who left her side. But there was nothing unusual. Lu Qingdi couldn't help but suspect that his beloved concubine's deduction was correct. It was already hot, and Ruan Ruizong was sweating profusely. He wanted to ask Ruan Fangfei again, but unfortunately, he fainted again. Master, can you let it go first? Save her first, save her first. Madame Ruan pressed a handkerchief to her forehead and pleaded. Yes, yes, the imperial physician. Where's the imperial physician? The imperial physician had actually already arrived and was huddled at the courtyard door. When he heard Ruan Ruizhong's voice, he hurriedly came in and greeted Lu Chengdi and imperial concubine Su. Okay, quickly go take a look. The scene fell into silence again. This son will take his leave. Li Honyuan spoke again. Without waiting for Lu Chengdi's response, he directly lifted his feet and left. Lu Chengdi didn't ask him to stay. He turned to look at imperial concubine Su. Beloved concubine Rua, why don't you rest first? Wait a little longer. Your Majesty, since Miss Ruan is unwilling to tell the truth, we can't use torture on her. Let's not talk about the cause of the incident. So many people saw what happened between her and Prince Zhong. It's better to deal with it as soon as possible. My poor Yuan clearly didn't do anything, but he was inexplicably implicated again and again. As she spoke, she couldn't help but cry. Not to mention others. Even Lu Qingdi couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. That evil creature was pitiful. And before, what did she say that he had a good temper? If he was pitiful, then there was no one in the world who wasn't pitiful. If he had a good temper, then there was no one in the world with a bad temper. However, Ruan Ruizong and his wife, as well as Prince Zhong and the others, all looked at Lu Qingdi. Lu Qingdi pondered for a moment. Beloved official, Ruan has been loyal to me and worked hard for Qi Yuan. I can't bear to see his good reputation ruined. Imperial brother, you don't have a wife now. You should marry this daughter of the Ruan family. This subject obeys. Prince Zhong always knew what to do in front of Lu Qingdi. Imperial concubine Su slightly lowered her eyebrows and narrowed her eyes. Ruan had ruined her son's reputation, yet he still wanted to retreat unscathed and become a prince consort? Not only did he not trample on Ruan, but he also raised her status and made her a senior instead of a concubine. It wasn't so beautiful even in her dreams. She leaned closer to Lu Qingdi. Your Majesty, have you forgotten the order that Master Liaochen gave to Miss Ruan? With this reminder, Lu Qingdi suddenly came to his senses. Thank you for reminding me. So he turned his head and changed his words. The daughter of the Ruan family is impure after all. She should be a concubine. Ruan Ruizong almost spat out a mouthful of blood. In his opinion, it was obvious that noble consort Su was playing tricks. Obviously, she had forgotten that Li Honyuan had told him about Ruan Fangfei's fate. Thank you, Your Majesty. It was fortunate that Jingwan was not present. Otherwise, she would have asked the Grand Secretary of the Inner Court to gauge the extent of the trauma in his heart and ask him if he would still be loyal to Lu Qingdi after the way Lu Qingdi treated him. Although thunder and rain were the grace of the emperor, after he gave his heart and soul in exchange for the emperor's thunder, would he really have no complaints in his heart? When Ruan Ruizong thanked the emperor, at least his heart was not calm. Was he targeting Lu Qingdi, noble consort Su, or Li Honyuan? Moreover, if Lu Qingdi handled it like this, wouldn't it ruin Ruan Ruizhong's reputation? It wasn't a clever cover-up in the first place. It was equivalent to not having any cover-up at all. If Jin Xinhuang was involved, he, trying to cover up, would only make it more conspicuous. How about this? Lu Qingdi also felt tired and told them to do what they were told to do. After Ruan Fangfei woke up, if she wanted to talk, then she would talk. If she didn't want to talk, then she wouldn't talk. Lu Qingdi also didn't have the patience to pay attention to him. He only told Yu Zhongqing to strengthen the defense and patrols. Every family also couldn't lower their guard. This journey was really not peaceful. The following matters were also handed over to Yu Zhongqing to wrap up. Even if Li Zhang heard something that he shouldn't have heard, to have given birth to such a shameless daughter, he himself also lost enough face. As long as he was smart, he would restrain his family members and not go outside to talk nonsense. It should be known that as a common person, if they were caught criticizing the imperial family, it would be a serious crime. Li Hongyuan returned to his own Qinhuang carriage. And Yi quietly went up and knelt on one knee in front of Li Hongyuan. He softly reported the matter. The bridge on the road was broken by them. This was within Li Hongyuan's expectations. He also knew about Ruan Fangfei's cousin. Since I said to bite back, then bite back. Keep the person, it will be useful. It was just that the appearance of Qinhuang Zhong was really unexpected. Ruan Fangfei's decisive choice was indeed her style. There can't be any more mistakes on Wan's side. Master, rest assured. Because Luo Darren and old Madame Luo already know about Master's matter. When they were in the capital, they had already sent guards to the Luo family. Miss Luo has always been surrounded by people to protect her. There won't be any problems. On. Li Hongyuan closed his eyes. Go down. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/66536169. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. Exempt from registration. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com, Bikuga mobile reading website, mbicken.com. You're tuning in to the Echo Reads YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.